Right.
I love your commitment to performing the theme record.
You like that?
I'm sure we've talked about it on the podcast before, but this is the section of the podcast that most people listen to is right at the beginning, more than any other part, of course, because it's the beginning of the podcast. So it's just fun to mention that is you singing in the beat.
Yeah.
You were there in Paris, and we actually had you with Sky Crazy, now known as Crazy, these cool producers from Paris, and Meyer and us, and that's you singing in the theme song.
It is. I didn't know we started rolling yet, and it's funny. And you were telling me this, and I'm just like, yeah, I know all this. I was there, and then I'm like, oh, we've started. I
just thought it'd be fun to say that.
That is fun to say.
Yeah, go.
Welcome to the Damaged Goods podcast. I am your host, Jess Robert, and with me, like always, is recording artist Ill Vibe. We are drunk today. This is our first like drunk podcast, and not like sometimes we get drunk on the podcast.
We finished drunk, but we're starting.
Yeah,
drunk
we're starting drunk. Basically, we were just sitting there, and we're like, "Do you want to watch another movie? Do you want to put on another show? I don't know." And then we're just like, "Why don't we just podcast?" So. Here we are.
We're here. We have hot takes on world issues. We've been drinking. We've taken our Ambien.
I'm so drunk right now that I'm actually drinking water now. So this is like a special stage of the drunkenness that you guys are getting to see.
A good sign that somebody is drunk when they're drinking water.
Yeah.
Is in a funny way. If you walked into a party and I saw you drinking water, I would be like, oh, Jess has been drinking.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, no.
Why else would you be drinking water in the middle of a...
No, it's true. If I'm drinking water, that means I did something wrong. I like drank too much.
In the daytime, it's different. You're staying hydrated. Maybe it's hot out.
Yeah, that's true.
But at nighttime...
Yeah, at nighttime, if it's like 9 and I'm drinking water, you know that. That's so sad.
That's okay.
That's so sad.
I'm not judging you, babe. I'm marrying you. It's okay.
I feel like it's the same thing with you, though. You wouldn't
trust
be,
me too. No,
okay,
I wasn't just saying.
You wouldn't be at someone's party at 9 o'clock at night sipping water, you know?
Never that. Never water. I've recently started drinking more water because I'm trying to be healthier than I was.
Yeah. We drink lots during the day.
But there was a little while there.
Yeah.
Where, because I was drinking, let's say, 4 nights a week. 5 nights if you include having a drink. You know what I mean? And then how many nights a week was I drinking 5 glasses of water a night? Probably 2. So I was actually drinking more whiskey than water for a little while. And now there's water in whiskey. So I think ultimately I still got water, but you shouldn't get your water from whiskey. I'm pretty sure that's what doctors say.
I think that's
I'm pretty sure you're not
that's
supposed
usually
to do
like
that.
in the posters on the wall in like the waiting room when you're waiting.
Don't get your water from whiskey.
I'd like to start with talking about something that just happened to us recently, or I guess it happened to me, and you were there to witness it.
Yeah, you were kidnapped. I got you back. It was no big deal. By lunch, we had pizza. It was no big deal. No, whatever.
That wasn't it.
And I'll continue.
We went to a comedy show the other night. Mike Carosa's show that he invited us to. What was it called?
Shout out Mike. Mike's a guest from the podcast. We're going to have him back. He's one of my favorite people in the world.
Yes.
It's called Figure It Out.
Figure It Out. That's right.
And
it was so much fun.
What's the premise? What's the premise of Figure It Out?
It's basically comedians go up and they do their set, and Mike interrupts them.
Yeah, he like rudely interrupts them with like anecdotes about their joke that they aren't anticipating.
Sometimes it's like roasty, or sometimes it's like laughing at their joke and then being like, "Oh, that's really funny." The blah blah blah. Like
sometimes
like,
it's just workshopping the joke. Other time he's making fun of them. It was really cool. It was cool to see, and you could really, as comedy fans, it was fun to see the comics like roll with it, because in some cases they really took it well. In other cases you could see them kind of be like, well, I don't know what to do with that. How do I get back on the train of things I'm used to saying?
But I also think that's part of like the charm of the show is that it is a little bit like awkward and like a little bit, you know what I mean, at times, where it's like, it's not like bam bam bam, like, you know what I mean, in your face comedy. It's more so like, let's work through the awkwardness of you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean.
I like it a lot. What are you looking for?
My laptop screen just went down. I don't know why.
Oh.
It's okay. Continue.
So during the show, I'm not going to be able to do this if you're frantically looking around.
I'm listening to you.
Okay.
Continue.
So during the show, at one point, I forget even how it came up. But at one point, one of the comedians was like, like people who kiss their parents on the mouth or whatever.
Yes.
Yes. And so let me tell it.
Continue,
so the entire room is like, woo, like the room like overwhelmingly reacts to this, to kissing your parents on the mouth. And
they were really unhappy about the concept.
Yes, they were like not down. And so it was like unanimous in the room. Everyone was like, ooh, and I kind of like raised my arms. You probably like felt me kind of like raise my arms and be like,
I was
what?
proud of you, babe, because
really?
I thought that might apply to you, and I wasn't sure if you'd react. Most people in that moment where the room is already voiced like, that's gross.
Yeah.
And you put your hand up and said, I do
Oh,
it.
fuck it. Yeah, I don't care.
Because he was like, does anybody do it? Does anybody do it? He asked like twice.
Honestly,
and then
like,
you put your hand up.
I know there's people who think that it's weird. So basically, if you haven't figured it out from our conversation yet, I do kiss my parents on the mouth when I say goodbye to them. No tongue.
It's not weird.
No, it's not
I've seen it
weird.
and not
You've
thought
seen me
anything
do
of
it.
it.
Yes. So I know I don't judge other people for not doing it. However, people who don't do it and who judge me for it, I almost feel like that's your problem. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you're making it weird. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I thought that's what I kind of felt like that night, where I was like, people were like looking back at me and stuff and being like, ew, and I was just like, yo, y'all, I don't feel the ways about this at all. Y'all are making it weird. Like, being like ew about it is making something more than it is. You know?
I don't have that relationship with my parents. But for people who still have somewhat of that like childlike relationship, and yours isn't childlike because they do respect you as an adult woman, but in some ways it still does have that you're their little girl feeling. When you're home in their home, it has some of that.
Yeah.
And if it does, and your mom goes and you give her a before you walk out the door, there is zero weird with that.
Yeah,
and that is very different
and it's
than
funny
any
that
other
I
connotation.
never even thought of it from that angle, because I just thought of it now that I guess I don't kiss them when we're out in public. We don't really like if they drop me off. No, that's not true, actually. I think if they drop me off at a friend's house and I was thanking them for giving me a ride, I'd be like,
I think you would. In familiar circumstances, you might. If your mom leaned in, like if your mom, listen, lean in was a funny word.
I know. And even like thanking them for giving me a ride is like weird to say now.
But if your mom did go like, you would give her a, and it wouldn't be a thing.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I initiate it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't even have to. Yeah, it's just natural. Like, it's just very natural.
I have to get an ashtray. So I think let's keep talking, and at some point I'm gonna run and get an ashtray so I don't ash all over our fucking table. But keep talking. Okay. But I'm gonna, at some point while you're telling the story, I'm just gonna run. It's just like 20 feet away.
Well, the story was pretty much done.
No, that's fine.
Was just it.
No, I hear you. But we can move on to the next thing.
Oh,
and then while we're talking about it, I will literally just disappear for 5 seconds and get us an ashtray.
Yes, we can do that.
Do you have anything else? Because I have something I want to talk about.
Well, I mean, I've got lots of other stuff.
But you feel free to go to something.
On the same note, just like feeling like not on the same page with people sometimes. And this is a bit different because this is a different type of crowd. But we talked about this. I think we were watching John Oliver. It was a clip on something that cut to the talk, which is essentially like a bunch of women like around a table like discussing like hot topics or whatever. So they cut to it and the women said, "Would you let robots cook your food?" And like unanimously the entire audience was like, no. And I was just like, why not? Why wouldn't you let robots cook your food? I would trust robots more than I would trust humans. Humans can like come and spit in your food.
But that's not why they meant.
Why did they mean?
People feel weird about the whole like robots Turk our gerbs thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's just where they're it's not about do you think a robot would do a good job of cooking a steak? If you say no, you're stupid. Because you trust your stove to do it, you know what I mean? Like, you already trust electronics to do these things for you. And when eventually you have a stove that will cook your steak perfectly, you will trust that as well. And that is,
and it's almost just like this like ego too, that it's like, it couldn't cook steak as good as I could cook a steak. You know what I mean? It's just like, yes, it could. It could cook it better.
Yeah, I think
you know what I mean?
Like, it is ego, but it's like self-protection ego, because you and I are somewhat forward-thinking, and we're not the only ones. I'm not saying we're like on the like cutting edge of intellectual thought, but I think that we are in the group of people who say, like, we're willing to separate the fact that, of course, when robots get good at cooking, it means a lot of cooks won't be cooking.
Yeah.
So we are sympathetic to that fact.
Yeah.
While simultaneously being willing to say, well, of course, the robots will be better at it.
Yeah.
And faster, and will make less mistakes. That's the type of things that robots do.
Sometimes I feel like when people have that gut reaction, though, and they're like, no, I never would, they're not even thinking that. Like, they're not thinking, well, I would not allow that because I wouldn't want the future of our economy.
But it's still a gut reaction to a robot taking their job. They don't need to think through that.
The gut reaction is just funny to me because the conversation isn't funny. The conversation is like, yeah, that's interesting that one day, we could have a, economic struggle because all these robots are doing the jobs of 20 people. You know what I mean? But it's just funny that the gut reaction is the part that I don't understand. And then the other thing that I saw that's kind of related to that was on Facebook. It was like a viral article that was going around about how they're really close to like putting lab meat out on the market. So like meat that's created in a lab, and everybody's just like, oh, I don't know what to think of this. And what
it is scary though. That is scary.
I don't know.
I'm on board.
So I'm for listeners who don't know, I'm a vegetarian, so I'm really excited about that because I'm not against the taste of meat.
No.
I'm just against the killing of animals and the mass killing of animals.
Yeah. And,
so if we could find a way to grow it in a lab and it's not hurting anything, I am really excited about that, and I want to have that burger. You know what I mean?
100%. I think I ponder this a lot because, just for the record, very pro it. I like the idea of science solving these social problems for us, where, you know, we quote unquote need meat, and we don't need meat in its meat form, but we need some of what meat provides. You know what I mean? And one of the solutions is to make conflict-free meat, almost, where no animals ever suffers, nothing ever has a moment of displeasure in us being nutrified.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And so I think that's the goal, is if we can do that, I think, it's scary for people who maybe grew up in a time where the ability to do that sounds like magic. But if you listen to enough science podcasts and you watch enough science documentaries, you realize that in every space of science, we're doing magic level development, gene therapies, and, you know what I mean, recreating, splicing atoms, and all these things that we do. We're at a really advanced place. And so I think it's not a surprise that regular people are caught off guard and are like unsettled by it. But the more you look into it, the more you realize it's not that uncommon in science for them to be doing things at that crazy advanced level.
What were you telling me the other day, that people that were exponentially growing so that at a certain point people will be like 200 times smarter than their parents, or smarter than their parents? Is that what you said?
So basically, I was listening lately. I've been really obsessed. This is actually a good thing to say, because let's be honest, I'm in my non-podcast life, this has become a huge thing I talk about. I'm super obsessed with this concept of this intellectual dark web, and these guys are someone like Sam Harris and a bunch of these other sort of professors turned YouTubers and podcasters. And Sam was talking a lot about the idea of every generation becoming smarter than its previous by like greater amounts. So at one point we're like 0.001% smarter than our parents. Like, let's say this is like 5 generations ago or 10 generations ago.
Yeah.
And then it gets more and more and more. At a certain point we're twice as smart as our parents. And then they were debating and discussing the idea of what happens when we get to like 200 times smarter than our parents, because the technology jumps become so exponential that at a certain point, when something happens, like whether it's AI,
but is our capacity of knowledge and of learning becoming?
Well,
you know what I mean?
that's the point. Is they were basically saying things would get crazy, like maybe it would be 5 times more, and then you get to the point where it's like, we have microchips. And
I was going to say, if we're uploading stuff into our brain, like,
that's what they were talking about. Is if we had microchips, if one generation goes, well, we want microchips, and their parents go, well, we don't, their children will be 200 times or 2,000 times smarter than their parents were. And that will be essentially this kind of like crazy moment in time. So we got crazy mushroom trippy there for our listeners, because we don't really talk about that all the time. But it's a really interesting kind of thought experiment.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's like a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
Where it's
Black Mirror is just exploring these philosophical questions.
Yeah.
What happens when we record everything? What does that mean philosophically? What happens when YouTube is the single dictating voice of power in the world, so that if a video of the prime minister doing something crazy were to be uploaded there, it would change his life. And so these are all these different like they're just analyzing all the craziness of these technology areas, you know?
Yeah. So in summary, I kissed my parents on the mouth, and I want lab burgers.
No big deal.
No big deal. It's not a big deal, guys.
It's really not.
Stop making it a big deal.
It's not weird, although the comic was really just playing around. And
I know. And I hope, and if anyone's listening to this who was there that night, I was not offended at all. I thought it was hilarious. I just wanted to dive into that a little bit because I thought it was interesting.
No, and I had forgotten about that moment. Even as we discussed that night, I don't think we talked about that. I had forgotten.
No, we didn't. I wrote it down to talk about on the podcast.
I'm glad you brought it up, because it was a really funny moment, and I was proud of you for kind of owning, like, I'm really close to my parents in like a fun, like youthful way.
I love how he's like, I think it was Mike Carosa. He goes, "Why?" And I'm like, "Because I didn't know it was weird." I'm like, I just learned it was weird right now. In this room when everybody went, "Ooh,"
So I want to talk about something super high tech and dark, and it's pretty high level. It's hard to understand.
Are you being sarcastic?
Yeah, it's pasta.
Okay. You want to talk about pasta?
I want to talk about pasta.
Okay.
So fans of mine on social media may have seen over the time I talk about my love for pasta. I talk about our pasta intake. Mm-hmm. It's been probably the single biggest vice of my adult life.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
is the carbs that come along with pasta.
Yeah.
So the thing is, we eat pasta, I would say realistically 2.5 times a week.
Yeah.
I think most weeks it's 2 or 3 times.
I was going to say, yeah, sometimes it's 3.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
So I say 2.5 times per week.
Yeah.
That's 10 times per month.
Yeah.
That is 120 times a year. Mm-hmm. We have pasta. Mm-hmm. Varying noodle shapes and sizes.
We switch it up.
I have meatballs or non-meatballs. You went vegetarian and your pasta intake kept chugging because we have your new meat substitute made of, is it beans?
Yeah, I think it's like a soy meat.
And I know all about how the carbs aren't good for us. Mm-hmm. Like I know about that. But if it's just that the carbs put weight on us, we've got 4.5 years of experience now kind of going down that chain, and your body looks great. You got a little extra meat, but in like a good like Sean Paul video kind of way. Like I like it. So it's not like I think we've established that it's not going to blow you up into being some kind of like obese Jerry Springer.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't let it get.
I just mean it's you only recently got a gym membership, and it's not like that's been the case that you suddenly were like, Jess, we got to slow down the pasta. And I've got a little meat on me, but mostly like grown man 35-year-old meat. So if the issue is just the carbs, I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Because people judge me. When I talk about how much pasta we eat, I get a lot of judgment.
Yeah. And if people who listen to our podcast will know that we've talked before about how picky Anthony is with different meals. So it is tricky because we don't have that much stuff to rotate. There's only so many things, so many meals that we have to rotate per week. So inevitably we do come back to...
You eat vegetarian. You can eat anything you want.
I know.
I mean, anything you want within your vegetarian
I know.
lifestyle.
And I also hate cooking and I'm lazy. So when you say you're going to have pasta, there's no way I'm ever going to say no. I just want to have pasta.
What's so good about it? Let's talk for a moment.
Yeah.
Why is pasta?
So
we had it tonight.
I think it's got the pizza trifecta where it's like because it's the carbs, it's the sauce, it's the cheese. Well, I have Parmesan cheese on it.
I have dairy-free cheese grated or sometimes sliced on. Like I had a chicken tonight, for example. I had a chicken Parmesan with dairy-free cheese because I am lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I just think it does have the pizza kind of elements to
I like
it.
that.
We sometimes put onions and peppers in it, so it's got like a little bit of that. Yeah. It's almost like a pizza. You know what I mean?
You're right. I recently fell in love with the meatball. So when I think of pasta, well, I mean, I've always, yeah, hello. I've always had meatballs. It's not like I just discovered meatballs, but for a long time in a relationship, I just made like pasta with some ground beef and sauce. And we also chop up vegetables, peppers, and onions. These days you put other things in it sometimes. And but recently I started making meatballs. And so when we talk about having pasta, the thing that flashes through my mind is that moment where I cut the meatball open and there's like sauce pouring into the meatball. And that's the moment.
You described it like so romantically.
It's the meatball.
Yeah.
I have now granted, I don't not enjoy the pasta, but when I think about the sex, I think about your ass up in the air. And when I think about pasta, I think about the meatball. Like that's the moment that I picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the thumbnail in my mind when I think pasta.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
What's
sure.
the thumbnail in your mind of pasta? Like, what's the moment? What's the pinnacle moment of pasta?
I guess, yeah, because I don't really have meatballs. So I guess it would be when you have just like one noodle, and then like a load of like sauce and like meat on that
So it's like
on the fork
perfectly
at the
balanced.
same time.
You nailed the balance equation of ingredients.
I eat the sauce and stuff more than I eat the noodles. I always leave a bunch of noodles on the plate. So I like it when you have like a spoonful with like maybe 1 or 2 noodles, but then like a mountain of sauce.
So it's like a 2-to-1 ratio of like sauce and toppings to noodle.
And do you know what else I think it is? I think it's that me and you were both raised in pasta heavy households, correct?
Yeah.
So it really is like
it's a PHH. That's the official term.
pasta heavy households.
Yeah.
It really is like a comfort food. Like it is like it's
The warmth too, right? The warmth of that sauce. It just feels like mama love me. You know? Like Anthony Hamilton has this song which is like, mama knew love like a pasta. It doesn't say pasta, but I feel like it would say pasta.
Right.
Because that's what it feels like to me. Like an Anthony Hamilton song about his mom.
Yeah.
When I eat it, every bite. You know?
Yeah.
You smoked weed before this podcast too. Did that occur to you until right now?
No, it didn't.
You took a hit in the last
reminded
joint.
me.
No,
No,
it's okay.
I also took a shower, so if anyone's wondering if you're watching video that I'm looking like a shag poke,
No, you look great.
That's because my hair is wet.
You get your after shower swag going on.
Yeah.
All right, so that's my really deep jump into pasta. What you got?
So, girls liking bad boys is like a thing that seems really 90s to say.
Yeah.
But it is still a thing that I hear like guys say. Like I'll hear like maybe like a more like nerdy guy or whatever be like, oh, like girls only like people who are assholes, or girls only like the bad boy or whatever. You know, I'm too nice a guy. Blah blah. Yeah, you still hear that a lot.
As a nice guy, I experienced some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because you weren't.
Just because I never moved in that, like back in my day, because now I'm in my 30s, it was like, it was about being a player, and girls who liked, even though the player would undoubtedly break their heart, that was the guy they wanted. So when me and four guys would show up at the party, the one who was mostly shitty to his girlfriend and did whatever and kind of flaunted that he was that kind of guy frequently got the number of the hottest girl at the party, or was making out in the corner with the hottest girl at the party.
Totally.
You know
I think that's probably a thing that everybody can relate with.
Yeah,
They know that one guy in school, or not necessarily one guy, that those few guys in schools who were never really nice to girls, but
James
always seemed.
I won't say his last name because I'm not that dude. But fucking James. And one day James...
Are you actually serious?
Yeah. And then one day James... So I dated this girl in high school for a long time, and she was a good one, so she never cheated on me. But then years later, I heard from James when he was drunk at another party in our college years. He's like, "You remember your girlfriend?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I hate to tell you, man, I hooked up with her after you guys broke up."
You told me.
And I was just like, I of course you did. It's like the only hot girl in town you didn't sleep with was like this one girl that from my hometown that I hooked up with.
Yeah.
And then years later, of course, he eventually made his way around and got her too. So yeah, so I have a lot of sympathy for this story. But please continue.
So I was basically just saying, like, I was kind of thinking about it and wondering, like, why that would be. And I'm sure there's, like, evolutionary reasons as to why that would be as well. But, you know, I'm not a fucking scientist, so I'm not going to get into that. But one thing...
You're not a scientist?
No, I know.
Even with that scientist hat you have on right now?
And then my scientist voice. But I did think back on Disney movies, which actually I tend to bring up
As scientists do.
As scientists do. And I was thinking about, like, okay, what do the good guys look like in the movie? Like, look at Aladdin.
Yep.
He's fucking feather in his face, and he's like, poof, poof, and he's fucking oafing around, and he's just like, oh, I'm scared of girls. Like, it's just kind of like, he's this big oaf. And then Jafar is fucking sexy as fuck. And I think it's like this weird, like, no, honestly, and I don't even mean like the way he looks, because he obviously looks kind of like a serpent. But like, it's like he's, you know, he's talking all confident, and he's being all whatever, and there's that weird, like, scene with him and Jasmine. I feel like Disney, and even Scar, if you look at Scar and Mufasa, like, Mufasa was kind of a babe, but Scar was also like, he had like this weird like confidence to him that was just like, do you know what I mean? It almost has like this like weird energy, and then he like kidnaps like the mom, and then he's just like keeping her like hostage. Am I unpacking a lot right now?
This says so much about you. And at this point, I think we've gone over a minute, so what I'm saying right now won't be included, but that last rant you just did for sure is an Instagram clip. How you're explaining why Jafar is a sex symbol. For sure, if I Google the words Jafar is sexy, you're the first person to ever utter these
No, and
words.
I mean that it's subconscious. I don't mean that little girls are thinking, I want to fuck Jafar. I'm not saying it's that. I'm just saying that like all these bad characters are supposed to be, even Ursula as a woman, even she's fucking shaking her tits around.
Ursula's
and
definitely gay too.
That's actually another argument, is that all Disney villains kind of have a gayish vibe to them, which is also true.
Ooh, is that like a thing? Is this like a popular theory?
I really wish Shayla was here, because I won't do it justice to explain it, and I'm not going to try.
I regularly wish Shayla was here for various reasons.
But Shayla and or maybe it was Katie who told me they both explained it
Not
really
the same
well.
person, Jess. Not everybody who are sisters are the same person, okay? I need you to go ahead and realize that those are separate individuals.
Stop roasting me and make me let me make my intellectual
I happen
point.
to know that both also listen to the podcast, so it's fun to roast you about them in particular.
Anyways, I don't really have an intellectual point. I'm just saying that I think that
It was great.
That is definitely a factor. Do you understand what I mean, at least a little bit?
I mean, I have masturbated to Jafar on one or two occasions.
Just be serious for 2 seconds.
I rubbed my magic lamp.
Oh, the khaki.
It was good for the time I had. I like it.
What else you got for me?
So my next point, while I pour my drink, is if you recall recently, I was telling you about a news story about how China has recently decided to stop taking the world's garbage.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't talk about it on the podcast, I don't think.
No, we didn't.
So, and granted, this isn't like something I knew about for a long time, although I guess I kind of knew it. But it's not something I think about. But once in a while I do, don't let me forget, we're coming back to China garbage. Once in a while I do play the game of when you take your garbage out from your house or your building and you see the garbage in your area, whether it's just for your building or for your street. And I'm relatively good at math. I once won a TV show based on my math skills. And so I do some quick math in my head about what that would be like for a year just for this building, or what that is for the city just today. Yeah. Whichever way you want to go with the math.
Yeah.
But God forbid you go long ways. So for this building for the year, and then you go all the buildings for the year for the city. It's crazy. The amount of garbage that we produce is
a lot of garbage.
I'm not breaking new ground here, but if you just kind of play it out in your mind, or you look at the garbage that you put out every week and you go, how many people do I know? And I know less than 1% of the people in the area around me. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's a huge problem. And so China has basically been taking a huge cut of that garbage for a long time. We've been buying the space from them. I don't know why they have it. I don't know what the economic move was necessarily.
Is it on like islands on the water, or is it like right in China?
I don't know. But I know China's been buying it for a really long time. And recently they decided they can no longer take it. They've probably reached some kind of critical mass. Maybe they've always planned on stopping around this amount of garbage or this timeline. I don't know. But the important part is that they've kind of pushed back and said, hey, we're about to wrap this up. And so the headline I read is something like North America and the Western world has like a 30 billion ton garbage problem on its hands. We need to find a place to put all the garbage. That's an update you can already go read on Google. Here is my hot take on this. Why the fuck can't we just send it into space? It's been said before. Every single person listening to this, it has occurred to them when they're looking, if they've ever thought about the garbage problem, for a fleeting moment, they thought, what about space? But I feel like we haven't taken it seriously enough. And I think that the thing that we're caught up on is that it feels wrong to litter there. It's like, well, it's so clean. Let's not litter there. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's the unlittered area.
I think that's what it is. Like, to me, the first thoughts that come to mind is that seems very expensive. Like flying a rocket with tons of garbage into space.
It would be expensive for sure.
And then how many times could you really do it until you couldn't afford it anymore?
Ooh, you can afford it forever. We could make it a global solution. We spend trillions of dollars on other crazy things.
How much could a rocket even hold? And then would it even be worth shooting that rocket into space?
That is a really great point.
Yeah.
And I've never thought to do the math, and I never thought that the math might be the reason why it doesn't work.
Do the math right now.
Oh, I can't. Come on. Even the great Illy cannot do that level of math right now. That's the kind of math they make movies about, if you know how to.
The great Illy, the mathematician.
Oh, I'm pretty good, but I can't do rock.
Some reason I'm picturing you with a cape that has plus signs and divide signs and stuff on it.
It's a montage where I'm drawing on and just rubbing out symbols and redrawing X's over them, and then
with an 80s song. Yeah.
There's a reason why they say I'm not a rocket scientist, because this is literal rocket science we're talking about. So I don't know, but if we were to allocate resources from all of the modern countries, I feel like there's got to be some solution, or if there's not a solution yet, we should be developing one. They're working on. So Google has a project. There's an office in the UK known as one. It's one of Google's A&R. They've got a whole head office where they develop new things and they invest money and trying to get into new spaces. It's why they got into smart cars and other things that we didn't see coming. You know what I mean? Is from these various programs that happen out of their development office in the UK. And one of the programs that leaked, just the title of it, was called the Sky Elevator. And the idea being that they could transport you through the sky. Now, I don't know anything about that, but the point I'm making is we're developing crazy things all the time. Mm-hmm. Let's give Google the incentive and say, there's $100 trillion contract for whoever can get our garbage into space.
Yeah.
Want to bet that Google puts a fucking team on it?
Yeah.
I'm not saying they solve it, and I'm not saying I'm naive enough to say that by 2020 the problem is solved. But you put that out there, that it's this is a thing that we're looking to do. Maybe Google solves the problem the way they solved so many other problems where there's money on the line. Right now, there's a problem in the world. It's expensive to call people on their cell phone. In third world countries, it's expensive. Here in Canada, it's expensive. And every day, a trillionaire starts another company trying to solve that problem. You know what I mean? Because there's so much money on the line for whoever solves that problem.
Yeah.
We just got to put the money on the line.
Yeah, interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my drunk rant on send garbage to space.
I thought about a really good movie based on that.
Let's do it.
So
Pitch me on this space movie.
Okay, so
Space garbage movie.
it seems like it's a regular everyday movie, people just living their lives or whatever.
lives.
And then it starts like raining garbage.
Raining.
And they
garbage.
can't figure out what it is. All the scientists are on it, and they
where?
can't figure out why it's raining garbage. And then the twist of the movie will be that another planet, just like solar systems away from ours, is shooting their garbage out into space.
Here's the cool thing about that. I thought I knew where you were going, and you still caught me off guard. I thought you were going to say a government program, we're sending garbage up, it's falling back down, which would still be a good movie.
Yeah.
Half as good as the movie you twisted me on at the end.
That could even be like something that somebody proposes in it. Like maybe the government's doing that.
Maybe early on they pitch the idea.
Yeah.
Like the main character, some Jeff Goldblum-esque character, maybe younger and more handsome, but in the spirit and energy of a Jeff Goldblum, is pitching, let's just send our garbage to space. Like that's the answer. There's unlimited space and it gets bigger every day. He's giving this whole monologue during the opening credits about how they're going to send the garbage to space. And then during like his like wedding or something in like act 2, garbage starts raining down on him and he immediately recognizes what it is because of course he's the guy pitching this idea to the government. He's spent months writing up this whole thing. So now he's like, what the fuck? Are you guys doing this? And he's the first to realize that if they're not doing this, some other fucking planet must be sending us their garbage.
Yeah.
That's a great movie concept.
Thank you.
Wow. I love it.
We did it together.
If we had any level of budget at all, I would even make a bad version of that. We can't even afford to make a bad version
No,
of
yeah,
that
the
movie.
raining garbage is the hard part. we'll just get a bunch of our friends to just like throw
How
garbage.
come all the garbage is really light and harmless? It's all like Lay's chips bags.
It seems like it's
and
coming from the side and
There's
not
a lot of
from
Grant's
the roof.
bottles of whiskey and like boxes of wine. It seems like it's very specific garbage coming down from this planet. I like it.
Cool.
It's your turn. We're batting ideas back and forth here.
So we're getting married in September, as we've mentioned.
Whoa, we're getting married in September?
Yeah.
Races away.
Very convincing. I'm a part of a lot of blogs and groups and different things
And
talking
hate
about
groups
wedding
and-
stuff, hate groups, yeah. And I just wanted to talk about one thing I found interesting. I'm actually in the Buns wedding zone, which if you don't know Buns, it's kind of like a community where you can like trade stuff and give advice and like all these things.
Yeah.
So I'm in the Buns wedding zone, and one of the rules in it is that you're never allowed to call like something that somebody posts like tacky or like be like ew or whatever. That's actually like a specific rule
kinda
with
like
the
it.
word tacky. And I agree. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Especially about someone's wedding.
Especially about somebody's wedding. It's
Yeah.
like their thing that they're working so hard at.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff is so tacky.
Well,
Let me give an example.
please do.
A trend that's going around right now, and if you're a woman, you'll definitely know what I'm talking about. If you're a man, you may have not noticed because men just tend to not notice these things. But you're definitely at a wedding where there's been one, and it's where they have like the flower child or like what's the boy the
I think it's the flower child.
the flower child the something bear ring bear
Yeah, that's the
ring
ring
bear ring bearer.
It's definitely the ring bear. BEAR.
So anyways, they have him holding a sign that says like, don't worry ladies, I'm still single, and like stuff like that. Do you know what I'm talking about? This is very common.
Of course you are. That would be illegal.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, there's stupid things like that. What else?
So we're not doing that then? Is that what you're saying?
No. We talk a lot about like the things that we like that is really like we tend to not like the like norms that everybody does
course.
at wedding. Have some of the norm stuff we're into, but for example, we both talked about early on how we don't really want to have like the picture of us all lined up with like the bridesmaids to like put up on the wall. Like I don't think we would put that on our wall.
Yeah, when you
we're-
brought up the photo shoot, I kept being like, babe, there's certain things, like, do we really need that? And you
Yeah.
agreed with a lot of it.
Yeah.
Some of it you were like, come on, just stand there and take the picture.
Well,
for
a
me.
little bit of me at first was just like, oh yeah, like this is just what we're doing. But then I'm like, yeah, wait, we wouldn't want to put that picture up. I would
Yeah.
way rather have a picture of us like all laughing and like
the roll call
sitting-
picture is so weird.
Yeah, and it's just like, yeah, exactly. It's like we could do something where we're all sitting together maybe, but we don't have to be like us in the middle with like the things on the side and like, you know what I mean? Like it just seems like weird.
I love you so much because I think if I'm any of the other women I've ever been in a serious relationship with, I don't think would have agreed with me on this stuff. But the way that my brain works is if we're, and can't remember what we're paying for our photographer and videographer, but it's several $100s or whatever for each.
Yeah.
And if I was paying that in any other case, I would be like, I don't want any of those photos. I want you to get cool pictures of me smoking a joint with my best man, my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
I want a cool picture of me and Jess exhausted after we got married and her head's on my shoulder. These are the pictures I want.
Yeah.
But those are not traditional wedding photos.
Yeah,
for
sure.
They get those too,
Yeah.
but I would say that's like the 30% of what matters to most
and definitely
couples.
people are caring more and more about that
Yeah.
now, but they still want like
you know what
all
I mean?
the
I want
typical
those
ones.
candid, like almost Sports Illustrated, Time Magazine moments where it's my
Yeah.
mom like wiping a tear.
Yeah.
Genius. I will frame
But
that and put
remember
that up
too
for
that
life.
you can't just do all candid. You do have to plan some because, for example, if your bridesmaid helped you plan all the stag, all the shower, and all that stuff, you don't want to have it done and be like, oh, we never got a
But
picture
you know
together.
what?
Oh shit,
You
know
could
what
do
I mean?
that in half an hour or an hour in a media wall style shoot. Get a picture with everybody you love. Where take go click, 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 click. Okay, next person.
Yeah.
And you could get that.
Well, that's what people do. Yeah, for sure.
But that's not how most wedding shoots go, where it's 80% of them is these. All right, now it's brother-in-laws and uncles.
Yeah, no,
No
totally.
cousins. Sorry, Jake. Only brother-in-laws and uncles in this photo.
Yeah.
Next photo, step siblings.
And now
it's so weird. It
I
makes no
guess
sense to
if
me.
your mom was like, I really want a picture of you and your dad and your who and your whatever, or your, you know what I mean?
I'm
like,
down to do it if people want it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just saying I don't go in there and be like, Jess, I can't sleep
We've
tonight.
missed
We
something on the
didn't get
checklist.
pictures of
but
the
I think
cousins.
I just think in people's defense, it often is the parents that want it anyways.
And in like I got all kinds of in people's defense because in people's defense they haven't seen some of these family members in ages. In people's defense, this is the only time in their life they're ever going to throw a big party
Yeah.
where people come out to celebrate them. There's 100. I'm totally with it. I'm just saying for us,
Yeah.
I look at these things differently. If we're going to throw a $12,000 party, which is without even being specific, is in the universe of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Here's how I would do it.
Yeah,
I want the
totally.
photographer to capture emotional moments. I want the videographer to shoot in slow motion and give me something that makes me cry when I'm doing magic mushrooms in 40 years. I don't want just copies of the speeches, which we've
we
talked
don't
about.
need our full bodies in every photo.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's kind of like
We're
a
not
thing
just
for me,
documenting-
where I'm just like I don't need to
Yeah.
see like our shoes that we bought and whatever. It's like just to come up close and take
Yeah.
a good picture, like a normal
Yeah.
picture. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Because it's like when would if I was taking a picture of you and Tynan, I wouldn't get your feet in
No.
it. I would take it. I would
And-
take a normal picture. Of you
And
guys,
also,
you
you're
know
not a
what I mean?
professional photographer, so you're already great. But I mean, if we were to, when you're hiring a professional photographer, what are the things that we tell them already when we shoot couple shoots? We think we want really cool, memorable shots. We want to try some different things. We have cool ideas of like poses together where I remember when we did the last couple shoot,
Yeah.
we were sitting on like a railing and I was sitting one way and you were looking at the camera. And it's like, none of that is just us holding hands, looking at the camera like it's 1936 and we're just documenting that we exist.
Yeah.
Because that's what those photos look like to me.
Yeah.
Like, hey, grandkids, we existed. Look, we had shoes. You
Yeah.
could see you could see everything.
Yeah.
And I would way rather make something that's like a little commercial about how great the day was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of the video and for the
Totally.
photos. Yeah, those little candid moments mean everything to me. And Notion is probably going to have his camera there. And I don't know if he listens to all the podcasts or if I'll just tell him directly on this one. But that's what I want from him. It's just to like go around and get some cool moments where it's like my dad looking proud.
Yeah.
That's what I want. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I want your mom and dad dancing where they're having a nice little moment. All those like moments that would go in the closing credits of the movie of the wedding. You know, those little moments that that mean something. And that's to me means way more than the 16 people standing across like it's like
Yeah.
a 1972 basketball team photo.
And also, like you said, if it's just a half hour, whatever. But it's like
Oh, I'll
at the
take it
point
with them.
when it's like roasting out and you're like standing in line to get photos with people, it's just like let's just go relax and have fun. You know what I mean?
And yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, another thing that I find really interesting on the wedding group that I'm in is how specific some brides are and like how they like things need to be a certain way or it's almost like it's not a wedding. So the one that I saw recently was a girl said, my mom, oh my gosh, guys, what do I do? My mom bought the exact same colored dress as my bridesmaids and my wedding is this weekend. What do I do? And I
What
was
do
just
I
like,
do? Well, first of all, you commit suicide because you can't
you
get married.
definitely just have to kill yourself.
You can't get married like that.
But I was just like,
Alternative option, kill your mother.
yeah.
But do it now because you don't want the funeral to overshadow the wedding. It's important to get that funeral out of the way early. Yeah, that's fucking insane.
Yeah, that one is crazy. The other one that I mentioned the other night was a girl, one of the girl's bridesmaids dyed her hair blue. And she was like, what can I do? Should I kick her out of the wedding party? That one I understand a bit more because it's kind of like, oh, that's going to be distracting in the pictures. But again, that's
If
so
you
much
like
focus.
them at all, you just move
That's
on.
so much focus on the pictures. Yeah, like if Dina wanted to dye her hair blue, I might be like, well, you're going to be like super
would be
blue at the
unfortunate
wedding.
timing.
It's almost like that's an interesting decision for her.
Yeah,
But
no.
it's like, I wouldn't care.
If you don't love them, for sure, you need to be like, what the fuck, fix your hair. But if they mean anything to you, you just go, well,
Yeah.
that's Janice or that's
But if you
Mary,
don't love
that's
them,
what she
why
does.
did you have them in your wedding
No,
party?
totally. That's a good point. I forgot. As a
Yeah.
guy, I forget that wedding party means.
People you love.
Well, no, those like 4 people that stand right next to you. I forgot about that for a
The
second. There.
bridesmaids or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it's you just got to get over it.
Yeah.
Even for our wedding, like there's so many things we've been specific about, but I was talking to a great friend of mine, Todd, about it, and I was just saying, I'm anticipating stuff going wrong. If someone spills something on my pants, I'll wear different pants. If they don't match, it'll be a funny story and it won't matter. I refuse to let the pants define the day. Or if the bartender doesn't show up, so the bar is super awkward all night, no sweat, we'll pivot. It's
Yeah,
like I
we'll
refuse
figure
to
it
let
out.
any one of those
Yeah.
things define the day.
Exactly.
And that goes for your mother-in-law's dress or your friend from high school's new blue haircut.
Yeah. That's where I do get a little bit of the stress that people have because it is this big event that you're organizing.
Oh, it's huge,
And
yeah.
you really, and it goes by so, that's the thing to me is that I know it's going to go by so quickly. So if I have to spend 2 hours of that day trying to find a new bartender or whatever, that would kind of be a
won't have
bummer.
to.
You know
won't
what I
have
mean?
to.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got enough in place and enough people around us that if something were to go wrong at that level where it's finding one new person, that won't fall on you. If we lose the bartender, the caterer, and 4 other things, and it's a Ben Stiller movie, well, A, I want that Ben Stiller paycheck, and 2, we might need you to get on the phone, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
When do you go get your dress and stuff? Because I know you've been like anxiously awaiting
Yeah. So
July. It's finally July, so I know you're in wedding dress.
Yeah,
mode now.
so next week I have to go meet the girl. She actually works at like a wedding dress place or whatever.
Oh,
so
cool. I
I'm
didn't know
meeting
that.
her and I'm going to look at a few different types of lace and blah, blah, blah.
Make some final decisions about the.
But yeah, I need to have like a serious conversation with her and be like, we need to have this done before August or
dress.
I'm going to be shitting my pants.
Yeah, of
like,
course.
And also I need to like buy shoes to match. I need to like plan the rest of the outfit once it's made. So it's just like, I just want to get that dealt with soon. So hopefully that gets dealt with soon. And
Next
that's
week, you're going to go meet with her?
Yeah, next or this Wednesday.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
I've had my suit for a while. I got blunt wraps to match my suit.
Did you
No,
actually?
I didn't. I would, but I don't know if that's a thing.
Oh.
But yeah, obviously I'm not going to see you in the dress for quite some time, but I'm excited about that aspect.
Yeah.
I've been privy to all the other stuff, so it's just.
We're
missing
also doing the
ingredient.
thing where we're going to see each other before the wedding because we're going to do some pictures in the morning
Yep.
and we're not actually going to get married until 4, which as we saw recently, attending another wedding is kind of good.
Yeah, it's great.
Because we went to a wedding recently that started at, I think like 2 it
2,
was.
I was
or-
going to say, yep.
Yeah, and there was a big gap between the wedding and dinner, which to be honest, if you were friends with everybody, you may not have noticed.
I heard several people say it's crazy how much time there is until the bar opens. Because
Yeah.
what happens is the bar closes.
Oh, that's
They had a
right.
little mini bar open only during the ceremony and before, and so there was like a 90 minutes of nothing being open, basically, or people just kind of talk to their cousins awkwardly about, reality TV shows and stuff,
Yeah.
and then the kind of party got
and
going.
to be honest, it's still some weddings start at noon, so it's like it still wasn't even that long.
we're straight
But I
on
think
that.
there was just 1 or 2 hours in that could have been.
we are
know what
so
I mean?
straight on that because
Yeah.
we have the bar. The bar is going to be open during that time.
Yeah,
And
the
B-
bar will close during dinner. That's the only time.
Yeah, but it'll be open during the time after our ceremony's closed and before. Will it not be before dinner?
Yeah. I think that there might be an hour after the ceremony that people will just be mingling.
And there's no bar.
I think so, just because we wanted the bartenders to stay late. But Deve's going to be performing and stuff like
True,
that. So.
If we get
we
closer,
have wine.
If we get,
so
that's true.
We've
So
got the wine.
So we should make sure the wine's out for then, so people
Yeah.
can, because that's great. Because then it can be like we can almost even get Deve to go up at the beginning of her song and maybe do a cheers, so we can get people to having a glass of wine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And then it's like,
totally.
hey, everybody, grab the bottles of wine that are on the tables. We're gonna do a cheers, and then she plays her little mini set.
Yeah, totally.
And she's
Usually
my favorite
you
singer
do
that I've
serve
ever
wine
met,
with
so.
dinner, but because that's
think
the
we
one thing that'll
should.
be at the tables.
I think we should. That's smart.
like just like put it out
Why not?
right away. Yeah.
Because I hear you. You're right about that, but.
Also, another question. You don't really know much about wine, so you might not be able to answer this.
anything.
I'll have to ask Katie. I've got red and white wine for each table. white wine you usually have cold. It's going to be outside, so it's not going to be cold. I don't need to like sit it in a thing or something.
I think you just kind of go as is.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be, but I don't think it'll be a problem.
Yeah.
And honestly, if that's the one thing that people are like, wow, the white wine's kind of not
warm
cold enough for me, then like, so be it. I bet you he still gets drunk.
If that's the one thing that people come.
And we're gonna have a bar full of cold drinks. That's not like there's no other options. If that's really not your vibe, you can go hit the bar. You know what I mean? And then so Devarcho will perform. So we're not gonna have that same problem with where there's like a dead moment in the middle. It's just gonna be a vibe. And then the dance floor opens. You're DJing. It's gonna be a whole crazy night. I'm gonna try to stay. Man, I want to stay dancing until late at night, so I got to make sure I don't get too lit early. That's the thing I've already been thinking about.
Oh, yeah. I think I'm going to have a very light drinking day because I think my adrenaline will be going anyway, so I won't really need to like drink to, you know.
I know if they're serving like whiskey cokes and there's a dance floor and they're playing all their favorite music, I could just see me going in. Just for the same reason I do on the podcast, where I'm having a great time and I'm getting into it. And the thing with me, and we've talked about this, I never get crazy drunk. I just mean drunk enough where I can't continue to party, where I'm like, okay, I'm fading.
Yeah, for sure.
It's 12:45 and I'm fading.
I just wrote 9:30 on my hand because I actually have a call with the caterers at 9:30 to go over all of our stuff that we're having
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Have you guys enjoyed this podcast of us planning our wedding?
That was only a brief segment.
No, I know. I'm just kidding.
So I wrote down some stuff. I was looking at, before we started this podcast, I wrote down we made this huge list of stuff that we might be able to talk about, things that like come up that we often have discussed, and like stories from way back. And once the podcast got going, we had so many things that came up naturally that really we haven't ever gone back to the list. It's just this list of things that we wanted to talk about. And I mean, there's everything from here, like how much we love the show Big Mouth, not going to talk about it, Ouija boards, numerology and how stupid it is, magic mushrooms, like 1,000 things that we wanted to talk about. But when I was looking today, I saw a couple things on there that were from my childhood, and they're these little memories and stories that I have that I've told throughout my life because they're like borderline like unbelievable stories that either my parents told me or something that happened to me, and I just always thought it'd be really fun to like document it and like tell the story on one or two of these stories on the podcast.
Yeah, let's
and
do it up.
I want to know some of yours as well, because I think once I start talking about this, I think we must all have these things where it's like WTF moments that happen to you when you're 7, so you have no way to frame it.
Yeah.
And then when you forget about it because you're on some other shit and you get focused on other things.
I love it.
But then when it pops in your head, you're like, what?
Oh, yeah.
What was that about? Like, what was that
Totally.
crazy thing? You know what I mean?
Totally.
So, let me tell this crazy story. So, when I was really young, I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. My mom told me this story, and she told me the story several times. If she had only told me it once, I think I would have chalked it up as I must be misremembering it. But she told me it probably at like 5 years old, and then again at like 6.5. And then I have a vague memory of around like 10 years old being like, did I dream this thing that my mom told me? Let me ask her. And I remember asking her, such and such, did you tell me this story? Or did I dream that? Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, I'll tell you again. And she told me again.
Tells you again, yeah.
So for
And
sure,
you keep thinking you made it up.
I heard this story from my mother, a reasonably normal person out in the world, okay? Mm-hmm. So the story goes as such, that when she was in approximately grade 8 or grade 9, how old are you then? Like 12 or 13 years old? Mid-puberty. That was always the key to the story.
Yeah, so like 12, 13.
Directly midway puberty. Yep. Like you're wearing a bra, but it's not the biggest bra you're ever going to wear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And she had a friend that was this guy that was transferred to her school. Picture like 1970s, like Netflix show, period piece. Guy gets transferred to the school. He wears she always told me this too, a flannel shirt, collared shirt, big poofy vest over top of the flannel shirt, big cargo pants, and big boots. Okay, Matt always wore this fucking outfit.
Right.
My mom becomes friends with this guy or whatever. Matt falls in love with one of my mom's best friends. Matt falls in love with Susie. They kind of casually go out on a couple of dates. The part that I always remember about this story, because I can't really remember the middle part that is sort of insignificant, how long they dated, I don't recall. I was told this at a very young boy. But the part that is stuck in my mind because I've got PTSD about it is the second half of the story. We tune back into the story in the second half.
Right.
And Matt and Susie have dated for a while. Susie's broken up with Matt because her father does not want them to date. It's all those classic, like, 1978. Dad is not having it. He's going to keep his daughter a virgin as long as possible. Matt, you're not getting it.
All right.
Matt comes over and confronts the dad. They have this big confrontation where they kind of have like a physical confrontation. And Matt's dad, Susie's dad, who's protecting Susie, is like, something wrong with Matt. Something not right about Matt. Essentially, the what's revealed to me in the story is that Susie's dad believes that Matt is not a boy at all, but is a girl in disguise.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so he says something like, and this is my mom telling me the story over several years of my life, show me your dick. I don't believe you're a man. Show me your dick.
What?
Yeah. And so, whatever, Matt like throws a ghost punch at him and runs out the door. Fast forward to again, I miss a few details. Fast forward to the next chapter of the story. Matt, who is a woman, who evidently has been hiding as a man for a long time.
Okay.
Kills a homeless man, cuts his dick off, tapes it to himself, goes back to the dude's house, pulls down his pants, and shows the dick.
Okay, so
this is a story I was told throughout my youth, and my mom told it like a woman who had like, have I ever told you the story about the time my friend almost got killed by a killer, like, whatever.
Right.
So this is like a story I was told as a very young boy. I vaguely even remember it. It seems like a dream, but for sure I remember being told it several times in my childhood.
I'm skeptical about the
I don't
ending.
believe it. I honestly don't believe it's true.
The rest of it all could have happened.
I believe there are some sketchy details that may not have actually taken place in the real world. But I don't know who lied to who. I don't know at which point was my mother told a crazy story 30 years ago and she's just like on her like she's not Italian, but like Italian mom just being like, this is a story from around the neighborhood from when I was a kid, and she's just repeating it back to me. I don't know. But that's like a story that I remember giving me like, I told my friends and they're like, yeah, there's no way.
You told your
even as a kid, they're like, there's no way. Yeah, and I remember being like, my mom told me. Yeah, it's just this like fucking story from my youth.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's probably very telling about me.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am sure that there's been like either friends who've told me stories or my parents who've told me like crazy stories. I can't really think of any. I feel like that's so crazy that I can't even think of any.
I know.
Isn't that
it's borderline. And by the way, my mother was not a problem. This is not like there's no pattern of other crazy shit she said to me. It was just like, and that's also part of why this is so interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, she told me some like crazy things in the regular context of the things that moms say. On the day that Biggie died, she told me Coolio died, because she didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
So my mom said,
that's a bit different.
but that's just more like, that's what I mean, like momisms, where they don't really know and they're like repeating something back that someone told them. So it's feasible that it was not 100% true.
Have I ever told the ball lightning story on the podcast?
I don't think so, but I love it. So please.
Yeah. So I won't make it crazy long. Basically.
Can I also make a request?
Yeah.
I'd also like to talk about the leprechauns.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Are you sure? No names? You don't even have to give who it was or how you knew them.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So
cool.
Continue.
So we'll start with ball lightning.
Start with ball lightning. I'm going to sit back.
My mom, if you've met my mom, she would never, ever, ever, ever lie. Like, she is just a person. She doesn't have that gene in her.
I'll co-sign. She's deeply religious.
Yes.
But in the good way, where it's like, it's important to her to be honest all the time.
Yes, exactly. So she told me that she was at the cottage with her cousins and stuff, and it was on the cottage on the lake or whatever, and there was a thunderstorm. Oddly enough, a little trivia for you, there's a thunderstorm right now. So if you hear anything in the background, that is a
thunder rolls.
that is either Garth Brooks or a Toronto thunderstorm.
Okay.
So my mom told me that her and her cousins were hanging out near the lake. They were hanging out in the living room of a cottage, and there was lightning everywhere. And then all of a sudden, a ball of light appeared in the middle of the room, like shoo, like lightning, essentially, almost like static, but large. So it would be like the size of like a globe, like a Earth globe, whatever you call those things, in the middle of the living room, like on the table, and it kind of hovered there for a
It's
second.
a sphere. It's like a
A round light electrical ball, just like woo woo woo, like in the middle of the room for a second, and then, and she said it just like made like a crack and it exploded kind of thing, and none of them were hurt. Like it didn't electrocute anybody. It was all like just like visual, and they all started screaming and like ran out of the room and were like freaked out. So I've more recently researched it, and this is called ball lightning. It's a phenomenon that is not yet like proved, but there is
scientists are probably also skeptical about it, which is interesting.
But there is videos all over YouTube of it, of different things that people have seen. You see like balls like rolling down a hill, and you could tell that. Well, I say you could tell the videos aren't fake. I'm sure anything can be fake, but it seems as if there is something that causes this sometimes. It's just there's been no definite information that says why it would happen, why it would be in your living room but not hurt you. Like,
it does seem feasible that there's an electricity phenomenon that we don't yet fully understand. Electricity is so... I mean, it is in essence, it is energy. So it's not crazy to me. If you watch the way lightning is formed, it's not crazy to me that there's another way it's formed that we just
when you
don't
watch
fully
lightning
know
in
about.
slow motion. Sorry, I'm being really interrupty today.
No, go. I love it. I love when you cut me off.
When you watch lightning in slow motion, it almost does crazy things that you didn't realize that lightning does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's totally unfeasible that lightning could do weird things that we don't fully...
Is unfeasible a word?
Unfeasible?
Infeasible?
Infeasible? Did I say unfeasible?
You said unfeasible.
Oh.
It's unfeasible.
You're unfeasible.
Okay, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Let me set up the next story, and then I'll give the pre-setup. You give the setup.
Be careful.
No, I'm going to give important context. So the story we're about to tell is easily one of the most interesting things I've come across in my life, because I am the most pessimistic, science-minded, rational human being that ever lived. Because if someone else is more so, they're just as much as me. Because I don't believe in anything if I don't see it, or if a scientist doesn't explain to me that, scientists generally understand why this works and how it works. If it's not one of those things, I do not buy. Do not buy. I've been skeptical of that ball lightning story for that reason, and a million other things I've been told over the course of my lifetime for that reason. Then you told me this story, and this story currently holds first place of the most likely thing that something happened that doesn't fit my narrative. You know what I mean? And I don't necessarily know if I believe that what you were told or what you believe is exactly it, but that there must be something that I can't think of happening, because I trust you so complicitly with my pessimism. Yeah. That ever since you've told me this has been like a WTF. Yeah. Like even in saying this, I don't believe in magic. I don't believe in any of those things. Yeah. It just means there's something happening that I can't attribute to it. Yes. And maybe it's a science phenomenon that I simply don't know about, or maybe it's some kind of space-time thing that scientists haven't yet wrapped their head around, and it doesn't happen often enough that it's documented. It's like such once in a however. I don't know. I'm
even impressed that you're giving it even that much leeway.
The only reason I say that is because I trust you, and you believe so complicitly or implicitly. I don't know. You believe so thoroughly that something happened that day. Yeah. That I'm like, okay, so something happened. Yeah. And I start reverse engineering.
And I also am. I feel like I'm on the same page as you, because it's like I also obviously don't think it's what it actually was. Okay. Anyway, so let me just tell it.
That's just I wanted to give my context before you kind of dove in to tell the story. But please go.
Yes. So to protect the person's identity, I'm just gonna say it's a person I used to know. So
used to know. That's it.
A person that I used to know, who I trusted very much, who again wasn't a liar, wasn't a regular liar.
You knew them
never.
Very well.
Yeah. There was nothing. They had no reason to lie to me. Nothing they'd ever done. It indicated that they enjoy lying, or that they enjoy making up stories to get attention. Nothing like this. So this person was as trustworthy as my mom, maybe one step under, because my mom is
as trustworthy as like a Eddie friend relationship or like favorite coworker would be.
Yeah, exactly. And they once opened, and this was a while after I knew them too, so they didn't even want to tell me the story right away. They opened up to me as we got closer, and they were like, yeah, this really messed up thing happened to me and a friend of mine I want to tell you about it. And I was like, okay. And he's like, first of all, we were not drinking. We were not on drugs. Like he wanted to make sure that was really clear. He's like, we were not on anything. We were leaving a party. He's like, so maybe I think we might have had like one drink. He's like, but we were not drunk and we were not on drugs. We were leaving a party and we were walking home together and we were walking around a hedge. And it was like a big like grass hedge or whatever, and we heard like folklore music. So it was like nee 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 nee. You know what I mean? Like that was the Boondock Saints theme, but you know what I mean. So they heard like folklore music, and they said that they looked. There was like clearings kind of in the hedges, and so they looked into the hedges, like looked for where the music was coming from, and there was a. So there was a like
it's fun to even say
a party of like kind of like little people, like little like leprechaun people. So yeah,
it's important you say the word.
Yes.
It's important you say the word.
They weren't just little people; they were like mystical creatures. They were like wearing little curly shoes, and they had little pointy caps, and they were dancing, and they had like I think there was like food being made, and there was playing violin, and there was music, and it was exactly like you would think of in a movie. And then they said that they were like, what the fuck, essentially. And so they kept walking, and as they neared the side of the hedge, they walked around, and it was a husband and wife, like an older couple, like in their 60s, sitting having tea on their patio. And he said they looked over at them kind of, and then just like kept having tea. Important
thing that you did say, but I want to highlight.
Yes.
Multiple people.
Yes, 2 people, and I also talked to the other.
You also spoke with the other person.
I also spoke with the other person, and they both got very squeamish about it and didn't want to talk about it.
Now, let me highlight something that I would say if I was listening.
Yeah.
The listener, let's say this is a listener who's coming to the podcast through me. Yeah. Oh, Callie's dreaming right now below, and she's currently barking in her sleep.
I'm already creeped out by this creepy story.
So let's say the listener comes to the podcast through me. They say, I trust Illy. He wouldn't have given that monologue if he didn't believe really thoroughly in all of his atheism and all of his pessimism that the people involved believe this. So they're on board. Now I jump over to you. You seem on board that you believe something happened. We now move to a third person who we won't even name, and we shouldn't because it doesn't help anything anyways. So the listener should be as pessimistic as I would be.
Yes.
You know what I mean? All I'm saying is this, is you knew that person for a long time, and they didn't just go away after this, and it's like they were like LOLing. This was just a thing that you knew about them in all of the time that they were around. And in theory, still when we see them, however often that is, still a thing.
Yeah.
And so it's just like either they lost their mind collectively with a friend that night, which is not impossible. I've certainly heard reports of similar things.
The one thing that I think is that they might have had their like drinks drugged or something like that. And then one of them said like, do you hear that music or whatever? And then it just kind of like.
Yeah. So early on, I gave the like space-time continuum a possibility.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm aware of how unlikely that is. I'm also aware of the fact that they possibly both were drugged. One of them saw something and the other one was out of it enough that they went on along. All of those things are possible.
And remember that there also could have been some elements of reality. There could have really been folklore music playing. People listen to that sometimes, you know what I mean?
That's interesting.
So that music could have really been playing, and there could have been people in their backyard talking, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe something was distorted and they heard the voices weird, and then, you know what I mean?
And we'll never know, and the listener certainly will never know because they're even another step removed from us.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's interesting and the takeaway from all of it is when you think over how many things happened where somebody said to you, somebody you love or trust said to you something that you had to be like, no.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, you kept trusting that person's opinion about other things.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, so it's interesting how it's like people you know and love have these interesting experiences. And again, I don't believe in shit. Every time anyone's ever said I saw a ghost, I'm like, LOL, tell me about the time you saw a ghost. Because I simply don't believe in most of those things.
Yeah.
But there are the moments like the Jesus story we told before on the last podcast. And if you're listening now and you haven't heard that one, you need to listen because it's the best example of this.
Yeah.
Or, you know, my mom's story or something that, you know, your grandma tells you and you're like, well, she at least believed that.
Yeah.
And if she believed that so thoroughly.
This is why I get creeped out by these types of stories. It's not because I'm worried leprechauns are going to break into my house and, you know, carry me away into the night. I'm not afraid of
Don't racial profile the Irish person.
I'm not afraid of what they saw. I'm afraid of like the mind, because it's like I get things too where I'll get obsessed about something and I'll think about it and I'll think about it and then I'll be like, is that real, or am I just overreacting, or did that really happen? Like am I making it up now? Am I distorting the facts? You know what I mean? It's just like I even get
that
like
funny?
that to a small scale. So if somebody was going through something in that moment or something was happening, you know what I mean? Like on a larger scale, that could happen as well. And that's what's scary. It's not even that, their hallucination was real,
You're 100% right. And that's a great segue to one of the other things I wrote down about my childhood.
Yeah. I have a good one too.
I have this memory riding a very specific ride, the kind of ride that does this.
The burps?
Yeah, the horseshoe, where it like goes higher and higher on the right side and then higher on the left side, and it almost goes over and comes back around. Here in Canada, we have a ride. It was like the pirate ship at Canada's Wonderland that did this. And then later on, I also like the rocket. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a rocket that does this that goes fully around where you're upside down hanging
And it
from
does,
the thing.
then it goes around.
And then it finally goes around.
Yeah.
I think this is a kind of ride that exists at many places. Like there's a Six Flags with one, and there's probably a. The memory I have, and this is as clear as day, is me sitting into it and feeling like the thing doesn't lock properly all the way around me. And the ride starts, and I'm a little unsure at first, but I generally trust the system. My dad taught me early that there are like layers of people whose jobs is to make sure this thing is safe. So I learned that very young.
Yeah.
So I don't worry too much about the ride itself, So I remember being a little unsure, but it's okay. And then I remember being like, once it gets going, I remember it shifting another notch looser. And then eventually, as we go upside down, it coming undone.
Yeah.
And then me hanging and
What?
and holding on and barely getting out of the experience alive. That's what I have a
Like
very
you hanging as in like dangling.
No, I remember. I think more like it's more like holding
You were holding sideways,
everything
yeah.
together for dear life and just barely doing so. You know what I mean?
Interesting. That's terrifying.
I'm certain it did not happen.
Are you certain it could have happened?
My parents, it is feasible that this experience could have gone down and they've never told me about it. It's feasible, but not likely.
Right. And don't you think that if it did really happen and if you had a concrete memory of it that you would be terrified of rides because you still go on rides?
And I feel like I would know what year that happened in, and I feel like I would know who was with me that day.
So it's a very vague, foggy memory.
I remember the experience, but like who was there that day? How come no one else remembers this?
Yeah.
It would be the worst experience of their last.
Do you know what
15
does
years as
happen
well.
sometimes? Is
Or at least
sometimes when
30
you're a
years.
child, and I actually have a similar ride one that I'll explain. When you hear a story about something that happened on a ride or that could have happened on a ride, you almost merge it into your own memories. Do you remember the Gravitron? So the Gravitron is basically an indoor ride. It's like it almost looks like a spaceship, and it spins really fast, and you stick to the wall. So you're just on the inside of it. It's very claustrophobic, very barf-inducing, and it just basically spins. You can go upside down because you're so stuck to the wall from the
I did
gravity.
it twice ever, so cool. Never again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Can't do that. We're adults now, babe.
Adults can't do that shit.
But I once had a story, or I was told a story that the bottom fell out, and basically people were screaming because the gravity was making them stick to the walls. But as soon as it slows down, you're going to fall into the bottom and die. So I merged this memory. I know that it didn't happen to me, but I merged this memory into my own memory of being on it, that I can't remember what it was like to be on it without that happening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like every time I think of it, I think about the bottom falling out. You know what I'm saying?
interesting.
So it could be that your thing is a similar thing.
Wow, I'm really glad I shared that because that sounds very similar. Where
Yeah.
you did kind of may have merged.
Yeah.
Because I for sure would have heard a story like that.
Yeah.
And then I probably young enough that got stuck in my brain, and then it's just like it feels. Because when I say it feels real, like it feels too real. When I go try to retrace the experience through my mind.
Yeah.
My brother has a memory, and I remember as a young boy in like our 12 to 15 era of our lives. He's 2 years younger than me. He shared a story about he has like as every kid does, like one stuffed animal from like his babyhood.
Yeah.
Is that a word, babyhood?
It
From
is
his
now.
babyhood.
Yeah.
And he said, I remember him saying it at the dinner table with the whole family. My sister wouldn't have been around yet. Do you guys remember when I got thrown this? Like in the big contest at Canada's Wonderland. It's funny that his experience happened at the same place that mine did.
And mine.
And yours.
Well, mine wasn't Canada's Wonderland, but
He
at,
just
like,
said
a
he was
fair.
in, and he said I was in a crowd. I remember because my mom said that's not how you got this fucking toy. She swore lots. No, I'm joking. She actually didn't say that at all. And he said no, and I remember him being very articulate and he fought it. He said, I got this toy. I was in the crowd. They threw it, and I caught it. And he was certain, and I'm his older brother, old enough, because, you know, it's like only 2 years, but at a certain age, I remember feeling like, no, I remember when you got that toy. you were handed it, like in the kitchen or whatever at your birthday or Easter or whenever you got the fucking toy. And I remember him being like, you guys are wrong. I'm willing to accept that's your version of history, but I distinctly remember that's how I got it. And I think, obviously as years went on, he knew how that was probably just a childhood memory, or he forgot about it entirely or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just funny how it's like, as a kid, how malleable your memory is, and how a story you tell yourself or a story you're told by a friend or a story that you hear on TV gets imprinted in your mind as like something that happened, or it's really interesting.
Do you want to hear another crazy story?
Tell me.
I have
loving
so
this.
many.
I as soon as I started writing these down, I'm like, we going down memory lane today.
Here's another one, like just like distorted memories.
Yep.
I would love to talk to some of my like childhood friends about this, because to see if they would remember. Basically, when we were maybe in grade 1 or 2, like super, super young, there was like a kidnapping scare. It was probably in the same year everywhere, because there was like a white van kind of scare that's like, if you see a van pull up near the school, move closer to the school, like don't go out near the van, even if somebody says your mom sent them or whatever. Do you remember this like kidnapping scare time?
In my
maybe it's still going on now. I don't know, but
my mom talked about it weekly.
Yeah,
Don't get kidnapped.
I remember specifically them saying that, and then it like freaking us all out. And then a van pulled over. So I think this part really happened. A van pulled over, but in our child minds, we like lied and like distorted it into like they rolled down the window, and then like we heard like a deep voice like coming from the van. And I remember telling the teacher this, and even like half thinking to myself in my head like, I don't remember if that's actually what happened, but we feel like there was like a deep voice coming out. And of course, the teachers are smart, so they probably know that you're lying about certain parts. You know what I mean? Like, of course, there's not like a scary dark figure, and they rolled down the window, and we're like, "Come here!" You know what I mean? Like that didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's just like we were just terrified because we got told that vans were going to steal us, so we like distorted it into this like this scary horror memory. You know what I mean?
It's really interesting. There's so many TV shows right now. There's a really common theme, and that theme is one of the characters had a really dark childhood, and you're watching it play out on them as an adult. It's like you see it on every legal drama, anything dark. There's like one character who's just like really dark. They were beaten as a kid or molested or whatever the storyline on that show is. But there's just a lot of infatuation with that, you know what I mean? And so it has me looking back at my childhood being like, what were those moments where I was quote unquote at risk, or like did that ever almost happen to me? And I have two distinct memories. That one I believe did not happen, although it might have, and one I believe did happen, although maybe it didn't, and both really, really fast, so they're not like super long stories. But so the first one that I believe it didn't happen, but it might have, is being at a skating rink and a man trying to kidnap me and taking me out of the building.
So you believe it did, or
I believe maybe. I've gone back and forth on this my whole life, but I brought it up with my parents recently, and they don't seem to remember it. And I distinctly remember it, and I remember my uncle catching the guy and punching him. But maybe that was just me playing out the idea of somebody trying to kidnap me in my mind as a kid, and then it kind of permeating, because no one else seems to remember it, but I remember it really vividly. And I've even, I think, told you about it as something that might have happened in my life. On the flip, something that I believe did happen, but it's just as foggy, so who fuck knows, is the librarian at my public school. When I was really young, I was the most overachiever at my public school. They named an award after me for a couple of years because I was like the most overachiever in the history of that school. I also started a library club to improve the quality of the library at like grade 7, maybe.
Tell me more. Say it slower.
Oh, trust me. No girl even wanted to be in like the same classroom as me, let alone to hold my hand, let alone to hold my dick.
Just to hold it?
That's not true. One girl tried, but I couldn't get hard yet at that time. But this is a combo for a different podcast. But the librarian, I remember I was sorting through the book order for that month, and I found porn magazines with a friend of mine in the pile of the books. And they were really dirty porn magazines. So the takeaway now as an adult is that the librarian would have been ordering extremely explicit pornography on the school budget
for themselves
and in the book order.
And you guys accidentally.
And we accidentally stumbled across it. And I remember us finding it and me being like, I don't want to even think about it or talk about it. And then I have a recollection of one of the guys who were in the room being like, I'll take it.
Do you want to know something that could be, and it could be way worse than the first thing we just said?
What?
is that somebody intentionally put them there so that you guys would find them and kind of like gets off on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely stuff
But
like
it was
that
in
out
the
there.
book order. That was just in. So it's possible, but it seems like, they say like all things being equal, it's probably the simplest thing.
Yeah.
It probably was, he ordered,
Yeah.
probably.
So did
but
a
then
guy-
again, does Scholastic make porn? Like the company that sends books to school, do they make porn?
No, there's
And
no
why do
there's no way Scholastics
and on the same
no, there's no way Scholastic
account?
makes porn.
They ship porn on the same account.
But maybe it ships from like a book warehouse where it ships Scholastics, but also other companies. You know what I mean?
See, in retrospect, that's the one detail I had never thought about, is how unlikely it seems that the company that would have shipped books to schools would have shipped adult porn. Do you know what I mean? Like, that seems so unlikely. The end of the story is that the guy brought it to class, showed a bunch of people, and then the teacher found it. They told the teacher where they found the book, like the magazine. Get this. The end of the story you're not expecting. This is like a fucking movie. Tom Hanks plays the fucking librarian.
Amazing.
Yeah, in a twist. So he gets fired, but within a few weeks of him being fired, here's our school, hands up in the air if you're listening, and then your other hand's right next to it with a little space between it, and there's a little like hallway in between. On one side's the school and the other side's the teacher parking lot. And it's not a hallway, sorry, it's a little bridge, a little wooden bridge. And on the thing, he like slipped and like broke his whole like neck and collarbone.
Ooh.
And then he was just like retired he retired that day. And I imagine like they paid him until the day that his like being fired happened or whatever. But I remember the whole thing happening and being very confusing, because at first there was rumor he was going to be fired, and then there was rumor he had broken his back, and then he was just gone.
Do you think that it wasn't a slip, that like somebody beat the shit out of him?
No, because I remember I forgot about this detail. The bridge was so narrow and he was like 290 pounds. He got stuck, so they had to disassemble the bridge to get him off.
Is this real?
100%, because I remember the bridge. I remember the bridge being disassembled that day when I walked home.
Oh, I thought you were going to end up saying that somebody.
No, that's why I
beat the
pretty
shit out of
vividly I
him.
believe this was real, because now that I think about it, the end of the story for sure happened, and it's really kind of linked in my mind to the beginning of the story, that we had found this magazine.
I don't think that necessarily means that it's real.
We
but
ratted him out. There was rumor he was fired, and then he slipped and got stuck on the bridge. They took the bridge apart, and then slowly, I remember 6 months later, they put the bridge back up or whatever. But it was just like, it's just so funny how like the point I was trying to make is that story and the crazy almost get kidnapped at the hockey arena story have the same level of like, I believe they're real in my mind. And one, for more like intricate reasons to the story, I believe is probably real, and the other one, because no one else will verify it, I believe probably isn't. But fuck if I know. They're both very like 20% opacity in my mind.
Yeah,
You know what I
totally.
mean? Like I can only kind of remember them, so who fuck knows?
Sorry, I have one more.
Yeah, please go. I love it. No, I'm loving this.
Another one that I have was a little bit older, so it seems like I feel like I'm pretty certain that it's some form of real.
Yep.
And it was in 2011 when 9/11 happened. Oh, sorry, 2001. That's when 9/11 happened, right? 2001, right? 9/11 was in 2001.
I believe so, yes. It was September 11th, I know that.
Yeah, 2001. Okay,
Okay.
cool. So in 2001, I would have been, I think, like 12 years old.
yeah.
So let's go with 12. And 9/11 happened while I was in school, so in grade 7 or whatever. And they sent us home just in case. That's how big 9/11 was, that as Canadians, we were sent home just in case anybody had family or if their parents were freaking out or whatever. We had like a half day at school. So they sent everybody home or whatever. And we got home. I think we ended up going to youth group or something that night. We went out somewhere that night with my parents. And then on the way back, they were at the door, unlocking the door, so with the keys. And it was nighttime now. And I remember looking up to the sky, just being like, oh, I wonder if like planes are allowed in the sky right now because of like 9/11, if they would like shut down all the airports. Actually, a pretty smart thought as a 12-year-old, you know. But I looked up and I saw what I could only explain now as like a drone or something. And this is 2001, where like drones that you could see and weren't really a thing, because basically it was very low. It's hard to explain for anybody who's only listening, but it was very low to the ground. There was no sound, so it wasn't making like a brrr noise. It was not a plane sound. It was just silent. And it was basically two lights at the front and at the back, but it was moving like it was like wiggling, if that makes any sense. Like it wasn't flying straight like a plane. It was like moving all around. So I don't know. I think that it's a very reasonable explanation that it could be a government drone kind of searching the skies to make sure there's no bad activity or something like that.
Wow, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of like not like even if you're pessimistic, there's a lot of like reasonable things that could have been that you in that moment wouldn't have anticipated.
Yeah.
And so it could have been one of those things. Yeah.
I wonder if there's any like not 9/11 was an inside job, but like 9/11 was a alien job. Theories.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Then they would be like, well, it was obviously aliens, Jess.
I like it.
Yeah.
I have a story, and it's nothing like the story you just told, but it does connect to your story in one word: youth group.
Yeah.
I never probably told you the story. It's the one time I almost joined a youth group at a church.
Oh.
And this is in my adult years. I would have been, let's see, I moved out on my own at 16. So let's say this is like 12 to 14 years old. Okay. So that's old enough. I remember it vividly. I remember the person's name. I remember what they look like. I remember the whole situation. And it's a really interesting story that I think will draw a question at the end that's very different than all the previous stories. But I'm curious what your take on it is. Mm-hmm. So there's a youth group near my house, and some of the guys around my block said, "Hey, Illy, you like to play basketball." Back then, no one called me Illy. They called me Twan. Let's not talk about it. Let's go play basketball. It's at a church, though. But that was around the time I had decided I was an atheist. So I was adamant. I was what they call an angry atheist. Like, fuck anybody who's dumb enough to, like, I've calmed down so much, and I really believe that there's a lot of ways to interpret, like, life. And, but back then I was just fresh and, like, full of fucking vigor. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not going to play basketball at a church. Until like my fifth favorite friend to play basketball with was like, best game in town is down at the church.
Best game in town.
You know what I mean? It's sort of like, it's like like an after school special.
Yeah.
But they had the best nets, the best balls. The court was made of wood, and that does matter. Okay. The cement and the weird like iron rim and the weird basketball that's half inflated all fucks the game up.
We got that God court, baby.
Yeah. Jesus done had some basketball court. So eventually I went down there and played. And there's this really cool youth pastor. I want to say his name, but I shouldn't because the end of the story gets weird, so I won't. I'll call him Peter. There's this youth pastor named Peter. And he's fucking great at basketball. He shoots three. He's the kind of guy who you go, I could believe he maybe could have made the NBA if he was taller.
We need to like make an animated version of the story, like the fucking Kanye story.
Don't have the time. But so yeah, so Peter's great. I mean, next level great, especially for a fucking youth pastor. You know what I mean? So I make a habit of starting to go to this game. It's really close to my house. It's walking distance. I go, I think it's 2 nights a week, like Tuesdays and Thursdays or something. I don't know if that's right, but how weird would it be if it was? Because to remember that shit like this long later. All the time. And I'm that kind of guy, like you know me. I love to talk. I'm always switched on for better or worse. So I don't say that as like an egotistical statement. But people like that gravitate towards me, like leader types, because I'm the kid who's like eyes are wide open. I got a million things to say. You know what I mean? And so Peter immediately locked onto me as like interesting. And I think because a lot of the guys who played ball weren't at the church, he saw me as being like a potential gateway into the non-churchgoers to make us maybe churchgoers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the next thing he invites me to do is he hears some of my, as we become closer, he hears about my dreams of maybe getting into music. Because this is a young me who's just like dreaming of maybe being taken seriously as a singer or a rapper or something. Like long shot dream from this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool that I'm famous now. And he said, and back then I was doing some like school play stuff as well. And so he says, I'd love to invite you to be in this production we're doing, and we're going to like present in September or whatever. And I'm hesitant because I'm trying to be cool too. At this exact same time, I'm the least popular guy at my high school, maybe the 5th least popular, because I can think of a few guys who were like uglier than me, so they were at least less popular because of that. But for a decent looking guy, I was the least popular, decent looking guy at my high school. And so I was trying everything in my life to fix that. So joining a fucking drama class at a youth group was the furthest thing from that. So I was like,
or the best.
But I was super skeptical about the whole thing. And so I remember he was like, come read the part. Do me a favor. Come read the part. So I come read the part. And it's for this like devout Christian who makes like crazy Like, it's a really religious part.
Yeah.
Like, way more than I had thought. I was thinking, like, it's going to be in a religious production, and it was, like, preaching some, like, stuff. And I remember saying, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I told him I'm an atheist. I'm, like, talking to this fucking, like, youth pastor, and he says to me, would you pretend to be gay, like in a movie or something? I'm like, yeah, probably. He's like, but you wouldn't pretend to be a Christian. And I was just like, yeah, I can't do it. Anyway, so that's what I remember about him. And I only give all of that because I remember around that time things got weird between us, and he was really put off by the whole thing because you could tell that obviously, I don't think he respected, well, it's hard to explain, but the whole gay versus Christian thing was weird, and then I'd stopped going back to play basketball.
Yeah.
So later on, someone tells me that he was fired from the church he's gone because it turned out he was gay, someone said.
What?
And someone else suggested he was inappropriate with one of the players. And granted, I always thought he was probably just gay and never did anything else wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why he was eliminated, and that's why they said these other things about him.
Yeah, that could be.
You know, and that's all. And
and also in a time where people were more closed-minded, they would easily
especially
be like,
at a
he's a
church
pervert.
in a,
It's just
not
like
a small town, it was a city.
Just because he's gay and he's a pastor doesn't mean he's necessarily a pervert.
But the reason I say those things is I remember someone telling me that out and being like, "Is that?" You remember him being so cool and having the weird memory of the whole like you would pretend to be gay in a movie and being like maybe, but it's one of those weird like I remember as we had a really close relationship, but God got between us. It was like he was like one of those people who at that age, 12 to 14, was helping shape me at the time.
Yeah.
But then I wasn't able to go to the religious side. And then when I remember hearing that other story, I was like, I don't know what to do I don't know how to process that. And so I think I've kind of just like ignored even knowing that guy, even though he's one of the most influential people I've ever known. But I haven't ever even mentioned him to you, I think because it was weird the way it ended.
Yeah.
And then I heard weirder stories and I was like, I don't even know whether that is real.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of just like, I wouldn't say blocked it, but like, kind of like put it in the recycling bin for adult life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's an interesting sort of like vague memory from my early developing years, you know?
Totally. Do you ever remember me telling you about a teacher that I had that ended up getting like convicted of? And I shouldn't say ended up getting convicted because to be honest, I don't know the case well enough to know what exactly happened, but I know that he got divorced from his wife, got fired from his job, left the city, is no longer, he lives in Toronto now actually, where she was from my hometown, no longer is able to be a teacher anymore, all that stuff.
Wow.
So I think he made a plea deal maybe and didn't get in
so you
as
don't know the
much
legal
trouble.
specifics.
Yeah.
And anything you say following shouldn't be suggested like you do.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get into it specifically.
No, I'm saying you're speaking to the best of your memory.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just more talking about the fact that he was incredibly influential on me and a lot of my friends that year. Like he was one of those teachers that could really like talk with us, you know what I mean, and like treat us like adults. Like he didn't always like treat us like children.
Yep.
He would just like talk with us and stuff, and he was always like, if you guys ever need to talk about anything that you don't feel comfortable, like, you know, whatever, like come talk to me, which now seems creepy saying it, but it's just like,
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I know. And I've actually talked to him since too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I knew that.
Yeah.
Did you fuck him?
No, I did not.
Sorry,
but I don't know. It's a weird, complicated thing, and like a lot of people don't believe it's true, and like it almost kind of like tore the school apart. There was boys in my class who were because they were on like the soccer team with him, like leading it or whatever, and so they like spray painted on the school like blank is innocent. I'm not going to say his name, but whoever is innocent or whatever on the school, and so like it was like
a Netflix show for real.
Yeah, it was this big thing where it kind of tore apart the community because it's like half the people were like, it couldn't be like
he raised me and it was never a problem, and then other people are like, yeah, well I know her and she wouldn't just say that.
Yeah, the things that I've heard, which I won't even repeat, are very specific and very seemingly condemning that nobody would make those types of things up.
Yeah.
So I'm inclined to believe it is true and that he is very
and if it needs to be said, both of us, including me, I say as the CWM in the crew, the cis white male in the crew, I do tend to favor no one has a reason to make it up. Like generally speaking, I think I read something that like the statistical proven percentage of false sexual assault accusations is like 8%. So that's not zero, but you cannot disregard that the 92% of people.
Yes. Going to court is not fun. Talking with lawyers is not fun.
And I can't stand behind that stat.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's just like, yeah, not that exact number, but I'm sure that it's true that it's very low. Like it's not, all these things aren't fun. So why would you put yourself through that just to what?
It defines you. People get caught up in a movie.
Now, it's different when there's money involved and that you might get money if you say whatever, that for sure. In custody battles, for sure, there's lying, all these things. But as far as like sexual assault, it's like nothing. That's not fun,
And so if this was a TV show, you're watching some NBC or some Netflix or some HBO show, and a character accuses rape for their 15 minutes, and then 2 episodes from now they twist it and now they move to this lane, and then they get this, like, that's not how the world works. People are defined by that shit. Mm-hmm. So when you make a name for yourself as being the person who was raped by whoever, everywhere you go, people go, that's the person who was raped by.
Yeah, exactly.
Like whoever the person you accused is. And so if you're willing to be defined by that, best believe that the vast, with like several T's, majority, that happened for real. Otherwise, they wouldn't be willing to live in a purgatory of that being the thing that everybody knows about them until the day they die.
Yeah.
Because they're never likely to have another major news story with an A-list celebrity. That's the one. So that's the one that their kids' friends are going to talk about. And they're not going to be willing to do that unless it's real or they've got serious mental health issues, in which case you should be able to prove that because this person should have a long history of serious mental health issues.
Yeah, totally.
Or a real vengeance against the person you're talking about, which is not impossible. And as somebody who I consider myself somewhat of an intellectual, we need to leave space that there are people out there who would have vengeance for somebody and would just say something.
For sure.
So I just mean we need to be aware that that's something, but that it's the vast minority.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Can you understand? I know that sometimes the hashtag like not all men argument sucks because sometimes a man,
and I said it, and my friend Allison Dorr corrected me, and I felt I felt a lot more informed after we talked about it.
Yes, for sure. In that sense, you have experiences yourself that prove why that is something that came to be.
Yeah.
And that is that when you post something about like a rapper or whatever who beat the shit out of his girlfriend, who has pictures of her teeth knocked out or whatever, and then instantly when you post it, what do a few men say? Well, there's no proof. You know what I mean?
And you're like, yeah, there's actually video footage of him hitting a girl in the face. We're talking about triple extension, for example.
That's almost why it's almost kind of connected to the not all men thing, because it's like those guys are quicker to stand up for the man not having any information and be like, well, he doesn't necessarily do it. Not all men are like that. You know what I mean?
Here's my thing. The problem is people who blindly defend men.
Yes.
It's the blind defense that we
blind defense of anything is bad.
Yes. But in this particular case, when it feels like it's blind defense, where you're like, wait, you don't have all the info yet. Why are you on his side as a default?
Yeah.
Why are we defaulting that she would be lying?
Exactly.
Now, for example, can we talk about something on this? And this is a great segue. Well, I'm sorry for burping for the listeners. I've just been drinking and we have been having a lot of fun. Segueing out of old stories to new stories. This is a big deal. You and I haven't even talked about this off the podcast, so it couldn't be even more fresh than this. The Prime Minister of our country was accused of groping a female journalist 18 years ago. Here are the details, and I think I might accidentally give away my take on this when I give the details, because I'm about to tell you what I think is important.
I haven't heard about this yet, by the way.
It's big right now.
Yeah, I haven't heard about it.
Today, it's the number one thing on Twitter in Canada. Here's the thing. Here's an important detail I want you to listen to. She has come out anonymously. There's not even any speculation about who it might be. It's just a random anonymous account just came out and said Trudeau molested me during an interview 18 years ago. Now, one might say because he's the prime minister, they had to come out anonymous. And I'm not even like, I would never jump so far to say that exclusively means it's for sure a lie.
Yeah.
But it does feel weird that we can't do any level of judgment because we've got zero data to go on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, she specifically doesn't want to be contacted by media, so they can't follow up on any details.
Which is fine, and she's free to do so, and I would defend that freedom. But it does feel weird that somebody with not even the tiniest speculation of it being that negative, to be like, and we have zero data about it. Not even proof. I don't even need proof, but something to analyze about it.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know what to do with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know where to go. It's probably the single most, I feel like, when you play pinball and the ball just sits on a thing and you got to shake the table. I don't know a fucking way to shake. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. No, totally.
Because he's the most liberal. He's the most liberal leader in the modern world.
So this is what I think is important. Then everybody should be on the same page as us, where it's just like, oh, not enough information. Like, you know what I mean? Like, need to know more information.
But that means that we default to he's okay.
Yeah. Only for working purposes, because he's the prime minister. You know what I mean?
Because he's not perfect.
You
by the way,
you can't just fire him today. You know what I mean? Like,
for me, this goes for all our podcasts. So and our listeners aren't like this, but I know there are things he's doing that are wrong. But he's one of my favorite leaders in the broken system we have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I can't just default to. It's hard to just default to nothing.
I agree, and I've said this before. If I thought that every man was a pervert and every man only wanted sex and every man didn't respect me and every man wanted to rape me, I would kill myself.
And that's not true.
You know what I mean?
And that's not true.
I honestly would, because men are 50% of the population.
Do you know what
So if in a world where there's Trump going on the other side of the border and Trudeau's kind of like the saving grace, and I'm not even a big Trudeau person. It's just like, I'm not going to jump to he's also evil. Every man is evil. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't. No. And I'm sorry if more news comes out that proves it and stuff like that, of course I will stick up for.
And this as we're about to get married and spend the rest of our life talking about these issues together, do you think that if there is zero data to go on, that is the one case where we have to just side with if the person, and if there is zero other, like, 'cause let's say it's not like Roseanne where she said something racist and we go, well, there was those 4 other times. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is somebody where there are zero other things of anything you can speculate. If that's the case, if this is a case study where there is zero other evidence of the person doing something that would be connected to this type of behavior, and if the person doesn't give a name, place, vague even point in the direction of proof that this is when it happened and this is why this is all real, do we have to disregard it?
I don't think disregard it. I think urge to find out more information, to
wait. So compartmentalize and await for further proof before we are willing to.
Yeah, and I think
make a big deal about it.
I think that a lot more support needs to be given, as in, like, we're taking this seriously, we're looking into it. You know what I mean? Like, but it can't just be yes, he's guilty, because we need to treat sexual assault just like we treat any other type of case. Assault, murder, whatever. There needs to be proper proof to show that, because you're going to change this person's life forever if they get accused of this. So there needs to be proper proof, and unfortunately that's very, very sad that we aren't all psychics. We can't read minds. There's no real lie detector test. It doesn't really exist. That doesn't exist, because it's very sad, because people will fall through the cracks. You know what I mean? And everything, not even just assault, but in murder and whatever else. If you can't prove that this person murdered whoever, they might get off, and that's really unfortunate, but that's just the way it kind of is, and there's no better solution right now.
So that's the criminal system. The public opinion system doesn't need that much proof. We tend to, for example, if it was anybody else, we tend to favor on the side of, why would that person have said that?
Yes.
If it wasn't true.
Yes.
So, but I guess what I'm saying is I'm trying to find and there's a math word for this, where it's like a mechanism of which to decide in the future which ones we're going to get upset about. Or it's kind of like an algorithm, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, if the person gives enough data that we can have the thought, why would so-and-so even say this? Then I'm willing to side with you.
Yes.
But if I have nothing to go on and the person has otherwise been liberal leaning, I need to side with where all of the evidence is otherwise. For now. And maybe there isn't, like, in italics, for now. And maybe there are women who'd be mad about that. I don't know.
I'd like to say that I just don't choose a side in that scenario, that I'm not siding with him. It's that I'm just choosing to not choose a side.
I just feel like,
you know what I mean?
You know, I think of silence as somewhat siding with.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
I understand.
If we thought that our prime minister the liberal side was entirely a facade, and that before the cameras were on, quote unquote, he was willing to put his hand up a girl's skirt, we should have something to say on the subject.
Yes, absolutely.
So, but silence is pretty far from protesting. So I sort of feel like we're kind of on the side of. You know what I mean? We're not overly important. We're not changing the world. But the fact that we're deciding that, like, well, it seems like he might not have. So we won't say too much about it.
Also, this is going to sound terrible, but I worry a little bit right now with the Ford Nation that if something really bad were to happen and Trudeau was just out, what's going to happen to our country? You know what I mean? I know that sounds terrible because that doesn't prioritize over women's rights, but it's just like my brain is kind of like, no, cannot compute when I'm hearing this because I'm just like, this isn't like, you know what I mean? I really don't want that to be true.
Yeah.
So that's my own bias and my own like error, like thinking error, because it's like I should just be like more trusting of the woman, and then that did happen. But
and here's the other
hard.
thing. This is an interesting thought experiment. There's no way to know this, but if you were to map all the men, right? How many times did they make an advance? Let's use the word advance because that would include really bad ones and ones that were more just like attempts at potential romance. That made a woman uncomfortable. So I would guess in my life, for example, if I'm being very transparent, maybe one or two, and I mean lightly uncomfortable because I was misreading signs and it never went any further. I never
no boob grab.
I just mean maybe where I made an advance where I was like, oh, I misread that. Oh shit, I'm over I'm caught offside. Like I'm not supposed to be this far. You know what I mean? That type of thing. Some men are at 1,200. you know what I mean?
For sure.
And there's no way to know. And so there's a potential. Let's say Trudeau is in my world where he's at like 3. And one of those women goes, that dude who once kind of made like a move, I was pretty drunk that night. He's prime minister. I might say something about it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with saying it because he did make her uncomfortable that night. She was too drunk for that advance. And by the way, I'm making that up. I don't know exactly what the report is. But and if someone had made, let's say, 3 moves like that and none of them were completed with actually sleeping with a too drunk girl or doing, it's more just like misreading situations 3 times over the course of 20 years of being a single man out in the world trying to get laid.
Yeah.
I would say that's the kind of man you'd want to marry who makes that number of over advances.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the average guy, we don't know this, is probably around 42. So the guy who does 2 or 3 actually learned his lesson and never did that again.
Right.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of guy who maybe did that in high school and was like, I don't like this feeling. I really like it when I know if a girl likes me, and I adjusted.
And that's why it talks about rape culture and about like just like how we're raising our boys and consent and all these things are important because sometimes a guy could do it and be like, oh, like I just thought it's kind of what maybe when she's acting this way, I'm supposed to keep pushing or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not giving anybody, especially now, there's no more excuses.
No, you know.
But
now.
unfortunately, 10 years ago, a lot of guys thought, oh, well, she's supposed to act shy and she's supposed to act quiet. You know what I mean? Like, but whereas now it's like if she's being shy and quiet, you might want to check in and make sure she's still on board. You know what I mean?
100%. Like, so here's a way to look at it, I think. When we do rap shows or rap tours or lyric videos or anything, a percentage of the people we deal with, the way they go about how they communicate leads me to believe they are not good at communication. And that just means like a percentage of people that we deal with out in the world. Yeah. And by the way, the vast percentage are pretty good at it. I just mean there are a percentage of people you deal with where you go, oh, the way they navigate like complex situations is not great.
Yeah.
Navigating, I like you, do you like me? I'm not sure. How drunk are you? How drunk am I? Should we do this? I did just break up with somebody. I'm not sure if you're giving me the signs. It's somewhat complex. I've struggled with it as a man.
Yeah.
So I somewhat sympathize, isn't the right word, but I somewhat sympathize for somebody who maybe is, their social score is lower than the average, whether I'm at average or more, I don't know.
Yeah.
But they're lower than the average. And to navigate the situation, I'm not surprised where you would shoot your shot and miss in a way that the other person goes, oh no, I did not enjoy that. But then the key is you need to adjust and go, oh wow, I didn't like the feeling of the way that person reacted to me shooting my shot in that manner. And you adjust. That's why, I mean, the average person having 1 or 2 of these stories where you put your hand on the leg of a coworker and they're like, that's not okay. And you go, oh, that's not okay. And you learn your lesson. Versus somebody who 15 years later is still trying it because that's a predator. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And I'm not worried about me. If I become super famous, I don't think I've got any crazy stories.
Yeah, no, I'm not worried about that either. We've always been super honest about our early sexuality and whatever else. And
trust me,
you don't seem to have too many demons.
Mine is very flawed. but not in that way.
Yeah.
In the like, I didn't know how to manage my erection and like in any like reliable way until I was like in my 20s. That's like the worst thing I could say is I left a lot of women disappointed in my teen years. I apologize to the girls that I met between like 16 and say like probably 20, 21.
I got the good years.
You got the good years. Who knew? Who knew at those years that I was just around the corner from the good dick. I didn't. Anyways. That's so funny. Let's see what else I got on my little list guy here. Man, the only other thing that I have is an idea that I thought that, I mean, we've talked about it, but I thought it'd be fun to like talk about on the podcast. That way, if it happens, we can like call back to it. And I always have these vague thoughts that maybe we talked about it on the podcast, but I don't think so. I think we just talked about it out in the real world. But it's the idea that we had about doing a podcast in the park type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm really excited about that. Did we say we're going to do it like what, next year?
Yeah, just because we're planning our wedding and I'm about to go to Prague and there's like 100 things going on at the same time right now. And I want to make sure that like we kind of do everything properly and we're not rushing anything. But the idea is to basically set up our little setup just like we have here, but in one of our favorite outdoor places, such as like Trinity Bell Woods, which is like a cool park in Toronto, or maybe a park closer to us. But I think that park, and like getting a generator and actually setting up the whole like podcast studio outside in the sunshine, and then just like recording podcasts with guests who drop in all day.
Yeah,
and for people who live anywhere else. We've talked a little bit about it, but the whole thing with Trinity Bell Woods in Toronto is it's this outdoor party all day in the sun. People are drinking and smoking. There's drum circles off in the distance, and people are walking like tight ropes across two trees. It's this like really weird, like eclectic vibe in the park all day long. And I remember we were hanging out at the park, and we kind of started like weirdly brainstorming this idea. Yeah. What's exciting about the idea to you?
I don't know. I like the idea of like booking like appointments or whatever. So me and you will just sit there talking all day and have people like drop in and out throughout the day. I just think it'd be really cool. And we could make like a little sign and have like a little sign in front of us that says like damaged goods or whatever.
Yeah, for people who like walk by, it's like, this is what's going on. We'll put up a sign for sure.
Just like a different venue for the same thing, essentially, you know?
The most intimidating thing to me, and this is so telling of me as a man, is I'm really intimidated by generators. It's just like there's such like you have to rent them from specific places.
And then they make noise too.
They're big. It has an engine. What happens if it doesn't start?
And if it made too much noise so that our recording sounded bad, because it's like...
It would be fine, because there are quieter generators that cost a bit more money.
Yeah.
And they make some noise, but it just like chugs in the distance. It's fine if you hear it, because we'll have the mics right here, so you hear like a in the background. And it'll be funny.
What do we hear?
Hi, this is Damaged Goods. We got people dropping in all day.
Scary.
But it would just be like funny, not ideal, but like still funny. And there'll be people yelling weird slurs in the background, probably louder than that if some drunk guy walks by. But I just think that's the kind of thing that I want to do is, and this is a cool for like listeners of the podcast to keep in mind, is that I sort of feel like we're still in phase 1 of the podcast. And the idea was to create a thing and have it have a voice, like be something out in the sphere of voices and stand for something, whatever that thing is, you know? And I think for us, that's one part drinking and smoking and having those kind of semi-intoxicated talks. And it's one part having our favorite people that we meet out in the world over. It's a real pleasure to have someone like Mike Carosa in, Andy Hawk. We've got Lynn coming in from Icon Island, and it's just like cool. These are some of our favorite people to meet up with at parties and to have them over and have drinks and talk about stuff. So that's part of it. But a big part of it for me has been that if we ever wanted to like actually amplify that voice and ever say anything of any significance, you need like a platform to say it from. And so this podcast is that thing. And so sometimes that will be maybe intense, but I think other times it's going to be fun, like us getting drunk all day at the park and the point I'm making is that what we're doing right here, having our friends by and me and you getting drunk and talking on this podcast in our spare room, it's like the seed of what I'm excited is going to grow. And one of those things is podcast in the park. And I think it's going to be, it's next year. And that seems far away.
Oh, no, it goes so fast.
It's so fast.
I'm gonna be dead soon. Like just like life, honestly, like every year goes by faster.
Yeah.
Every year, I'm not even that worried about the winter. I think it's because we've been traveling and going to LA and stuff too in the winter.
Our life is dope. That's why. Our life's pretty dope. That's why you're not really worried about
But I just never really get worried about the winter anymore because I'm just like, oh well, it sucks, and obviously I prefer the summer, but it's not going to be that long. You know what I mean? It never feels that long anymore.
Super quick, and we spend a lot of the winter planning what we're going to do in the springtime and then the summertime. But yeah, so for the podcast listeners, you know, I often wonder if I should talk about these things so far in advance because on my Facebook a lot of the time, like I recently talked about my new album title for next year, The Internet, and like other things like that. And I go, do I talk about them too early? But I really enjoy being transparent while I'm inspired. I feel like there's some like fun in being like, I really love this idea that I'm having and we're working on it. And next summer when it comes around, this is going to be so much fun to do it. And I hope some of you come.
It's definitely more authentic that way where it's just
new.
like, oh, we just thought of it and we're excited about it. And you'll get to see it as it happens.
Happens. Because traditional marketing would say, well, don't tire them out too early.
Yeah.
They can't buy tickets for like 8 months. It's too early to talk about it. But I say, fuck that, weird old nun lady. I don't know why you're weighing in on marketing issues. I don't feel like you're qualified to really.
Much too early.
I feel like you're not really qualified to be expert on this subject as much as I am. But there's something fun about how, like, I think YouTubers and the way that they would just told you what they were going to do. So we're trying to make our intro better, and then next week it's just better. Like they just talk about it on the YouTube video, and then next week the intro's better.
Yeah.
And it's just like, so we got a new cameraman, and then it's just like a nicer camera. It's just like this transparency. It's like you get to be a part of this thing as it evolves. There's a classic, almost growing like mythology, like metaphor now, where Joe Rogan's podcast, which is earth-shatteringly big. It reaches like 1 billion views a year, some crazy shit like that. Maybe it's 500 million, but it's crazy. His first podcasts were shot on a MacBook One webcam with snow falling. It's the worst quality you could envision. This because it's the worst quality camera ever.
Funny.
And then when you add the snow, it becomes even worse. It's like this is the worst quality video you can shoot of anybody ever. And you think that like it went from a webcam show with 3 people sitting on a couch with the snow falling in front of them.
I don't see the snow falling. I'm just trying to look
You're looking
up the
for images
picture.
I can see in the reflection of the mirror. They've shown it on his new podcast. They'll like cut to an old clip.
It must just be like one
type in
specific
Joe
spot.
Rogan episode 1 on Google Images. That's what I would type in if I was looking for it. Because there is a episode 1 in the history of the world. The moral of the story being is that really horrible early stuff can lead to something really crazy. And so this is our early horrible baby. And I don't even feel horrible about it. I feel really good about it. From the minute we plugged in this neon pineapple, we have rituals here. It's little things like that that get me excited. Like us having rituals makes the podcast kind of like real and like worth something.
Yeah.
And so when people come over and we do our Polaroid pictures, we take a Polaroid picture with everybody who comes over. And right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, including the one that didn't work of Tynan. It's just a black picture.
Yeah, we'll have to get another one.
It did not develop.
I literally say that every time. I'm like, we'll have to get another one.
But that's the thing that people come over and I go, oh, we got to take a Polaroid. It almost feels like there's like some manager we're serving where I'm like, they'll be mad if we don't take a Polaroid.
Yeah.
It seems so real, even though it's just a rule we made up.
So
that
would you
comes
say
over.
that there's like a perfect balance between like authenticity and planned marketing that, you know what I mean, that makes it good and like accessible?
I think there are logical lines. Like I think the way that we operate, we follow those logical lines. There's aspects of the show where I'm really happy to talk about transparently, who our guests are and why. And I think it's fun to be just like, hey, here's what we want to do. Here's what we're really trying to do. We really want to have great conversations. That's why we have over the people that we have great conversations with. Our favorite friends in the music business. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The coolest people that we bump out into in the world. We're like, hey, it'd be really fun to have like a one-on-one or I guess 2-on-1. Hello, threesome. Conversation with guests where it's like you're in a kind of a closed, confined space and they're kind of tied to your seat for 90 minutes or 2 hours.
Do you know what we
and I
need to
get
work
ask
on
them
next?
questions. Yeah.
We need to work on getting like a more comfortable chair, I think, for the guest.
Totally.
Because I feel like
It's
that'll
not
help.
that bad, but we could do better.
Yeah, I just feel like it'll help kind of create a nice, like, comfy vibe if they're actually comfortable and not like sitting up straight.
You're right.
you
And
know?
we can afford to get another chair real soon. So I think that's a good idea. We'll do that. That's a good idea. Hadn't thought about that in some time.
I think we should wrap up. I'm feeling myself like fade fast.
Let's do it. If we're fading, we've certainly put in the time that we need to do to service an episode.
Thanks for staying on board, guys.
Thanks.
As I mentioned, we were drunk when we started, and now we're kind of winding down.
Let's wind down. So if you live in the area of us, if you're one of the listeners who lives in the universe of us, I have a show coming up in the Niagara region it's officially Welland, Ontario, but it's basically Niagara Falls if you're thinking about where it is.
Yeah.
Is that July 27th?
Yes, correct.
In the Niagara region. And I would argue that if you're listening from Hamilton or Guelph or Kitchener-Waterloo or any of those places, you should consider come party with me in Welland. It's like half hour away from you guys, and we're basically raising money for our wedding. We're gonna have a ton of fun. We're gonna get super drunk. I'm gonna perform some new music and a bunch of the hits. And Donnie Yonder, who has a whole band and is easily one of the sexiest motherfuckers in the rap game, is also headlining. He's a rap icon out there in the Niagara region. And so that's July 27th. If you live in Toronto, I'm performing a free show outside. The city of Toronto gave me a big stage and said, throw a party. So I'm throwing this Ill Vibe block party thing. It's August 19th. It's called the McGill Granby stage, but it's basically the stage right off of Yonge Street, kind of like near Dundas, right near the university. If you Google it, it's really easy to find. But it's this free outside show, and I brought some of my favorite local artists to perform. And I think that's it. I'm going to perform in Barcelona coming up in the fall, but I don't think any of our listeners are from there. So that's all I have to promote. Thank you for suggesting this. We were already a couple of drinks in when you were like, want a podcast? And I said, yep. And we told some crazy stories from our childhood.
We did.
Which I'm excited about. Yeah. I love you. I love them. I love everybody. Peace out.